Happy September 21st to you, 2023. My name is George. This is my show, the George Brauchler Show on 710 KNUS. Folks, we're only 2 shows away from the weekend. And yes, like you, once I get past hump day, it's all about what is the path of least resistance to a little bit of downtime and maybe even sleeping in past 4 a.m. I never can seem to get that far into it, but that's my goal. Listen, the weather today, and of course, we always disagree with the weather report that you hear come across our little ticker here at the top of the hour. It's just a bunch of balls of fire here that have changed. No lightning bolts anymore. Those have all been wiped away. Today, high of 82, warm and dry. Tomorrow, 80. And then interestingly, Saturday and Sunday, the clouds go away. It just looks like it's going to be a ball of fire in the sky, but temperatures of only 78, 79. As Billy told us yesterday during the show, Saturday, fall begins. And by the way, on this, it says autumn. Is there a difference between fall and autumn?
I don't think so.
Why do we do that? Is autumn just the prissy kind of uptight Cherry Creek word?
Yeah. Why that, why use, you can use multiple syllables when you could just use one, but that's okay.
Yeah. Well, and it's more than that though.
Yeah.
Because, fall is 3 syllables, isn't it? Fall. Isn't that, do you remember that?
That's your correct. Yes, exactly. Your public school education. That's good.
That's it. Because I've said this at least once on the show over the last however many years. We played a football game when I was a senior at Bear Creek against Cherry Creek, and it became pretty clear to me that what separated us wasn't the miles between our schools. It was the resources and personnel that they had. But they used the rich word. Like we were the Bear Creek Bears because, Bear Creek Bears. It just made sense. They were the Bruins.
Yes.
And Bruins, like there's people out there that are going to Google Bruin. What the hell's a Bruin? Does it have a trident? No, it's a rich name for a bear.
Yes. Yeah. The Cherry Creek kids always showed up. I remember in high school playing them in soccer. And the crazy part was they would show up with soccer balls that at the time were more than $100 a piece.
Oh my goodness.
Which is ridiculous if, back in the day, we're talking about, 80s, 90s soccer, not a lot of money. So they would show up in an entire bag full of balls. And each one of those balls was worth more than $100 made by the Italian company Diodora.
They had their own stadium. Jeffco had a stadium at Kipling and 6th Avenue. You know what I mean?
Yes.
These guys had their own stadium at their school, the Stutler Bowl. And the Stutler Bowl at the time, I don't know if they've changed it. It was one of the early versions of AstroTurf, which was a thin green plastic draped over concrete.
Yeah, that was great.
I remember when we showed up, first off, our whole team shows up and we look across the field. They have human beings shoulder to shoulder, goal line to goal line across the field. And I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah, they have like 3 times the amount of players.
By the end of the game, and we were getting pummeled. By the end of the game, as our guys are getting up and like wiping blood on top of mud and all, whatever else they could, generate, pieces of AstroTurf being pulled out of their mask. There were guys taking the field for the first time who had pristine uniforms. And I'm like, what?
Yeah. What is
going on, man?
The other thing that's weird, and again, you don't see it from football's perspective, but you get this if you're a soccer player and you've ever had to play at one of the city stadiums, is that they are pitched, and it makes it a problem when you're trying to get a ball to go in a straight line because it does not want to. Because what happens is is that
on purpose they do that?
Yeah, for drainage. The center of the field is pointed, and then it's slight gradient out to the side so that when it rains, all the water runs to the side. However, that works well if you're just sitting there in a line and running into people and smashing your face into them. When you have to watch a ball bounce, it's real difficult.
And judge where it's going to go.
Yes, because the ball, depending on which side of the equator you're on, the ball's going to go either left or right sharply when it hits the ground, and it's a pain in the butt. Also, when you pass, it's going to have a slight arc depending on which side of the field you are on. It's going to want to arc to the left or the right. So again, real giant pain in the ass. Yeah, I also think that part of the pitching in the stadiums for the football players is so that if you stand in the center of the field, that it's easier for the quarterbacks to see over everybody else on the line and everybody else in the field.
You think it's built for them, huh?
No, not necessarily, but I think it's an advantage. I think it's one of the advantages that happens. I know it's built for drainage, and that's the number one reason it's there, but I absolutely believe it also gives that quarterback
and
an
Cherry
advantage.
Creek had their own.
Yes.
By the way, this makes
All
the
their
story for those of you that were here back in this day in the metro area. You'll know what I'm referencing here. There needs to be some kind of a Netflix movie made about this team, because when you talk about Cherry Creek, and they're dominant, right? Like they win all the time. Dave Logan, blah, 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 blah. But back in a year called 1986, a ragtag group, a small group of football players at a school that is now probably not even 5A anymore, from the Lakewood Tigers, showed up and defeated Cherry Creek in one of the most epic state championship games ever in high school football. George Squires was the coach for that team. They ended up generating some guys that went. I want to say, what's his name? Darren Vandermeulen ended up going on to CU. I don't know if he ended up playing pro, but this was just a group of dudes who, I mean, when I say small, like they had numerous guys playing both ways.
Yeah.
Not Travis Hunter quality guys, just dudes that they had to have play both ways.
Yeah.
And they showed up at that state championship and beat Cherry Creek. It was the David versus Goliath story.
Yeah, it was. And they had no resources. Cherry
None.
Creek had all the resources, and
what an incredible story.
I think they were sharing uniforms at halftime. Just,
and jocks, which is really uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's another thing that you mentioned there that I don't understand. And this is, again, being the soccer player. I do not understand the highly specialization inside of football. Why can't you play both ways? I don't understand that, because I come from a world in which you have to have the ability to play both ways. And I don't understand this at all.
Because the offense and in soccer, the offense and the defense are on the field at the same time for each team.
So again, but the issue is you have to be able to transition.
That's a mandated versatility you don't need to have.
But the idea is that I know you don't need to have it, but I want to know why you're just a bunch of wimps. Why can't
by the
you
way,
play both
I was
ways?
going to say the opposite. I was going to say football is a man's sport, and that's why.
But no, it's not. It's not, because it's like, oh my God, I have run for a grand total of 35 seconds. I must now rest. I feel I must get my smelling salts. Someone fetch the fainting couch. I can't possibly run for more than 35 seconds in a row.
You and I, though, have talked about the drama that is built into soccer, where someone could run by someone else, sneeze in their direction, and they fall down like someone shot them in the face.
It's absolutely ridiculous. But but that doesn't negate my point to the idea that
you
bunch of football players, you can't turn around and play defense after playing offense. What I don't understand what's so darn hard.
There's a lot of collisions in football. It's kind of by design.
Don't you guys have a bunch of pads? Aren't you wearing a big thingy over your head?
The pads only keep you from dying, not from getting hurt.
But again, it seems like you problem. I just look at it and go, if you're really this tough, turn around and play again.
The problem is I could have this conversation and debate with you, not with rugby guys, because rugby guys have taken both of those sports and mashed them together and said, well, we're on the field all the time. Yes. And we don't wear anything.
And we're going to run into each other.
We're just going to run into each other and beat the hell out of each other. Yeah. If you don't have a broken nose, you've never played rugby. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I still remember in high school, there was a guy that was playing football, and he went out for spring in rugby, and he was asking me, because, I played soccer, and he knew that was kind of physical. I was like, yeah, you want to do this maybe? I'm like, and I was entertaining the idea. And then I think it was after his second game, he comes back and has a separated shoulder and a problem with his knee. And I'm like,
holy smokes.
No, I don't think so.
I'm fascinated with how it hasn't taken off in America the way it might have. Like, if you were to just simply describe to Americans the game, you would think that they would be like, oh man, I want to see that.
Sounds great.
But Glendale, and maybe still true, had the only rugby designated stadium in all of North America for years. They had the Glendale Raptors, still do. And I just don't I don't know why it hasn't taken off. Like, it feels like it should be a bigger deal. Like, pickleball has taken off faster than rugby has.
Which doesn't make any sense.
No.
And rugby it's a nice sport. It's a great sport to watch. It is brutal. And they have done one of my favoriteest things in the entire world, is that rugby has been smart enough to eliminate the field goal kicker, because that is a worthless position.
Oh, I thought you were going to say drag.
No, it's a worthless position. And I'm a guy that got paid to kick a ball. It is time. We need to get rid of the field goal kicker. It is stupid. He's not a real football player. He shouldn't be on the field. Stop making me watch this Nimrod try to kick a ball in a straight line. Let's see if we can
get an interview with Mason Crosby, former CU great, and I think
he made a ton of cash kicking a ball in a straight line. Doesn't make him a real football player. He didn't have to run around and hit people. He wasn't doing any of that stuff. And again, tip of the cap.
In fact, if he hits people, things have gone wrong.
Yes, exactly. Horribly wrong. But it is not. There's no reason. It's like the idea that we're having a basketball game, and then part of the way through the basketball game, we stop it and go, watch these two people have a tea party for 3 minutes. Yeah, great. Means nothing to the actual score.
To your point, though, it's like if they had a free throw specialist. What I mean? Someone gets fouled and they send in the dude to come in. All he does is drop free throws.
All he did. And it is stupid. You want to make it difficult? Take the uprights, make him spin in a circle. Now you've got a skill.
Now see that. At what speed?
Heck, I think that it should go slow.
Is it a variable speed?
I think it should be go faster the further we get into the game. So it's slow in the first quarter, a little faster in the second quarter, a little faster in the third, and pretty fast in the fourth quarter.
I would even be willing to slow it down the further the distance. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're kicking from 15 yards, that thing ought to be a blender.
Yeah. The other one is, if you don't want to spin it around and that creates too much of a problem, then the posts on the side, they need to come together and back out like a Mario game. So then you've got to time it to make sure that, and then again, that will speed up the further we get in the game, that the posts will move back and forth together. Yeah. If I can do it in a video game, you can do it with your stupid foot.
Or the ref, I'm always interested in involving law enforcement in some way. The ref could be armed with a taser. Ooh. And stands behind the kicker, and if it misses,
I like that.
You ride the lightning.
Oh, I like that a lot.
With the spinny blender thing. I still want the spinny blender thing.
I like that.
There's got to be, there's a way to make this sport better.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure it involves yellow or red cards.
No, well, there are ways. The yellow and the red cards can help. The other one it would be is with the field goal kicker. Make him not have to kick it off the ground. He can punt it, but don't give him any offensive line. The other team just gets 15 yards free run as quickly as possible. Get that thing off.
Just a stampede.
Yes.
You're standing in front of a stampede.
Yes. Let's see how tough you really are.
Let's see how many games you can play. Like, they have to have a new kicker every game.
Yes.
That's
much more fascinating to me.
Someone texted in, Bronco fans agree with Billy. Ever since they cut Brandon McManus, the kickers have killed us.
Yes, they have.
And here's someone.
And the thing that kills me is you're kicking a straight line. How come you can't get the ball to go to straight line, you idiot?
Somebody says Crosby was a solid tackler as a Packers fan. Someone else texted in. I'd have to go back and I don't deny that. He was a buff, man. Okay. I imagine the buffs are tougher.
Sure. And
other than the spleen thing.
And he could be the one. That's it. Yeah.
Well,
it could be the one that could be a decent tackler. But again, he didn't run around and do the rest of the stuff. It just not.
There was a game that ended last week on an incredible game. It was the Jets. Actually, it was a week ago Monday. I think it was the Jets Bills.
Yeah.
I think it was the Jets Bills. Jets win on a return punt. And it's in overtime, I think.
Yeah.
And dude catches it and runs by. And if you go back and look, the only guy that can put hands on him to stop him is the punter. The punter throws two hands into his chest, and it only moves the punter.
Yeah.
It did not move the other guy. It was like he was pushing himself out of his way. Like, I'm so sorry. It was
whoopsies.
I hope they played that in films. In fact, they needed to blow up that moment and put it on his locker. You know what I mean?
Every time he walks into the locker room, it should just play.
The only thing missing from it that you couldn't hear in the field was the sound.
Yeah. or like the video game sound. Like,
that was it. It was embarrassing. Somehow, Billy, we got on this topic from a discussion of the word autumn versus fall, because autumn is a rich guy's word.
This is short attention span of theater.
It is. There's some sort of ADD thing going on here. One thing that we didn't do is, did you have the trivia last night?
Yeah, I did that one. It was fun. Lots of teams.
Topic? Was there a Star Wars
No,
theme?
it was general trivia. It was a lot of fun, but I did something a little bit different between
I wore pants.
round 1 and round 2. No, I wore the sparkly G-string.
Oh, there goes the yogurt.
Yeah, exactly. And the best part about it is it plays Benny and the Jets when I wiggle just right. I'm sorry.
What does it play when you don't? I mean, oh, good Lord.
Saturday night's all right for fighting.
Oh, my God. Bless it.
I appreciate that. So
it's a visual now that I'm going to need therapy to get rid of.
Oh, it's awful. Yeah, because this is not for sharing. But it was nice between round 1 and round 2. This place gives me a couple of free cards, just coupons for free beer. And so I ask some questions in between each round because, again, it's nice to walk away with something free. And we only award first and second place in both rounds. So not everybody that plays gets anything free. So I try to make it somewhat fun and entertaining between the 2 rounds. Last night I had an idea. I'd been doing kind of trivia based on themes or based on the last question. Last night I had an idea to just make it stupid easy. And our final question was in round 1, how many total time zones are there around the Earth? And if you traveled around the Earth, around the circumference of the Earth, how many different time
73.
zones would you travel through? 24. So
I should have known.
So it's 24. So what I did is
wait a minute.
Yeah.
24 hours?
I know.
24 time zones?
Kind of
I had
weird.
no idea
Yeah,
there was a connection.
So there's a connection there. So what I did is I then asked a series of questions, but the answer to each one of the trivia questions was the number 24. And so people were really super excited
Did
to play.
Kiefer Sutherland factor into
No,
any
it didn't.
of those?
I should have, but I did things like this designation of how many carats is viewed as pure gold, and that's 24.
Oh, really?
Which anniversary is the pottery anniversary? 24. What is the atomic number?
Breakable.
Yep. What's the atomic number of chromium? 24. Kobe Bryant's jersey number 24. So I just did a series, but it was neat because everybody
Tino
got up
Martinez,
there. Yeah, so all they
first baseman for the Yankees, 24.
So they have to get up there, and it was just they knew the answer already, and it was just fun to play along. And so it was nice to you put the smiles on the faces of the people. They get a free beer, they'll stick, and most of them stuck around for round 2, and it was good. Yeah, it was a nice night. So.
The age of the attendees at the trivia thing, any of them 24?
Yeah. There were a couple that probably were in that age range.
Really?
Yeah. And I now have, it's kind of fun. They've come in twice, 2 different families that come in, and it's dad along with the kids.
How old are the kids?
The kids are in their, I would say, mid-20s to
all
early
right.
30s.
So it's a family affair.
Yeah, it's kind of cool, and they're sitting there playing, and it's nice because to watch that because it is their family time. They've carved out this piece to come to the bar, hang out, and I just gotta let them have a little bit of fun, but also watching the conversations because they've got it's 2 hours of just sitting there and talking to family, and I think
over
that's
alcohol.
Yeah, which is great.
It's very Thanksgiving.
It's a great way to do it. Yeah, and I've got a couple of regulars that come in. We've got there's one team that is stacked. That's got about 6 guys that come in.
They're stacked. Like, what makes them stacked?
Because they play. Most people play in teams of 1, 2, or 3. They come in and play in a team of 6. And when you put that many individuals together,
that many brains,
they can cover a lot of ground. So they normally know someone in the group that has the right answer. They are really tough to beat. They came in 2nd and 1st last night. But yeah. And it's always nice to see
so you don't limit the teams.
No, not at all. You can have one team of 17 people if you want.
I'm sorry, maybe it's a fair advantage.
Well, the issue is if you want to have the issue, they get a card. They got 6 people on the team, but it's a card of, you win 20 or $25 or $10 in beer. So now you got to split that up. Good luck with that one.
But I get why the bar wouldn't say, hey, just teams of 4, because if you had 6 dudes with you, either 2 guys got to go play with some strangers, some unwashed masses, or they don't go, or they don't whatever. So you're like, hey, man, as many people as want to come in the door and potentially buy alcohol, you could have a team of 1,000. We'd love it.
As much as you want. And but I always talk to those larger teams when they come with friends. I was like, but then if you play alone or if you just pair up in 2s, then there's some bragging rights. And you can talk smack for the next week or so. They're like,
how do you keep them from cheating, like going all AI on you and like just repeating your question into their phone and having it pop up with Jimmy Sangenberger?
It's a little difficult, but part of it is there's a timer based on the question. Once I ask the question, then hit a button and then the timer counts backwards. So unless you are incredibly quick with typing or, and you could hear someone speaking into the phone. So you have to be really quick with typing to get the right answer. But even then, if someone knows the answer, they're going to be able to answer quicker than you, just based on the fact that it's not like a set 200 points or 100 points per question. If I ask the question, it starts at 100 and then it's 99, 98, 97, 96, 95, 94. So you're probably at 89, 87 if you're really quick on Google, but someone that really knows it is going to be in the high 90s. So that balances it out. But as asking the questions, you've got to realize when to hit the timer, because you don't really wait until the end of the question, because that gives anybody that's a quick typist enough time to get through the question. So you've got to plan that out as far as when should this question be revealed.
Cheating is baked in.
Cheating is going to happen. But the issue is you're trying to limit it so that the cheater doesn't have a natural advantage to always win. Someone that has the knowledge.
What about just offering to some sort of off-duty teacher, if you will, like free beers to walk around and do that sort of test monitoring thing, like eyes on your paper,
eyes on your paper.
Yeah,
that would be fun.
What's in your pocket?
If you're open some evenings, I'll have you come over.
Believe me, I'm an educator, but not that kind.
No?
I don't. No, I love catching the cheaters.
What if I give you a stick and you could hit people with it?
I'm in.
Is that?
But that doesn't. Good. Yeah, that's Catholic school teacher.
Yeah,
that's not like
true.
Regular public school.
Yeah,
at this point, you can't even raise your voice at a kid who's threatening you with a gun.
That's true.
In a school.
But if we're gonna go Catholic, if I paid you extra, would you wear the habit?
You don't even have to pay me, man. I don't know why I'd charge you for what I do normally anyway.
Yes. It's just a Wednesday.
I find it liberating.
Yes,
frankly,
exactly.
to put that on. My God, my aunt is
I can't believe we did that.
She's a nun. She has a Carmelite monastery out in Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
There is great certainty that she'll never listen to this show. So I feel like what we've done here isn't really going to offend her.
No,
but in my own mind, I'm sure she's like, George?
Yeah.
Why are you, Georgie is probably what, Georgie, what? Why are you joking about our garb?
I know.
I'll be like, because it's funny.
Yeah, it's funny looking. You look like a bunch of
sinners. I am.
So it's the Carmelite nuns. So they're the ones that do the apples at Halloween.
That's exactly.
Is that what they do?
That is exactly the kind of humor they live for.
Yes,
know, when they're in that very modest environment out in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's why I was a favorite of the nuns in school.
I've spent a couple nights at the Carmelite monastery out there on my way here, there, and everywhere visiting family, and. Yeah, at no point did I feel comfortable asking the question, do you have Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
There was none of that. There was no Wi-Fi. Yeah. There was no TV. There was
indoor plumbing was a big hit.
They have a shared room where there is a television. I don't know what they're allowed to watch on the television. Mm-hmm. They have a number of board games. I don't know. I just remember thinking, I wouldn't pay for this room for a hotel, but you know what I mean? Like, this is the kind of thing where Motel 6 looks like the Four Seasons.
Yeah, exactly.
But they're such good people, and they were great cooks, and it's this shared environment where they do these different things, and they rotate through the Mother Superior role and all this other stuff. And, you know, at the end of the day, they're all going to heaven and I'm not. So I recognize that. It's a trade-off, right? It's a trade-off. I'm enjoying things right now, but I'll burn in hell later.
Yes,
they are kind of going through the things right now, and it's going to be all gravy for them.
Exactly. You're just making sure you invest in enough sunscreen.
It's not going to help. You don't need sunscreen for no skin.
Yes, that's fair point.
Some of the folks texted in here. Alexa wanted to remind us, and she tried to let me know about this yesterday. Jimmy Sengenberger, all E's in between a whole bunch of letters that don't go together. Today, and again, how does Alexa keep track of these things? I don't know. I don't understand. 10 years at KNUS.
Wow. Congratulations, young
10 years. Yeah. And she asked if we'd have him on the show. And I said, I'm not sure how to pull him out of class. I don't know. Who do I send the note to?
The other thing is I've worked with young Jimmy for quite a while. And let's just say that not a morning person. So the idea of us getting him up before the crack of, say, 10, that is a difficult prospect.
Maybe Stefan can wake him up. When Stefan gets up at noon, maybe he can be like, Jimmy.
Yes.
I picture them all in like a 710 KNUS dorm.
Yes.
Pete's there. Maybe he's the TA. Maybe he's not.
Yeah. The question, and the Jimmy and Stefan have the bunk beds.
Stefan's
and they're both in footy pajamas.
Stefan's got that thing that, for the braces that you have to put around with the little wrap around.
The headgear. Yes.
Headgear.
Yes. They have the footy pajamas.
But instead of I was going to say gag ball, but you can't on the radio.
They can't say that.
Nonetheless, once again, I'm not even sure what we're doing here anymore.
Yeah, but you know that it's gonna there's gonna be yell down the hall. It's gonna be like, Peter, Stefan's teasing me again. That would be happening. And Pete's like,
he
shut
put
up.
my toothbrush where he shouldn't.
He's threatening to put it in the toilet.
I think the problem here is, and it's good for us because nobody in management is up at this hour. And if they are, my God, they're not listening to us. It's the idea that all we've done is to continue whatever ridiculous banter we've been having. We just turned on the radio.
That's all we
just
did.
Like, anyway. And so there was.
Anyway, does this look infected to you?
I don't know, but it has an odd smell.
Thank you.
I think you need to have that looked at or at least brushed with a wire brush.
All right.
I don't know where to go from here, frankly. I think we've run out of runway. I'm going to do something I never do.
Shave.
There, yes. I'm going to let you know about the real estate market and talk to you about our friends at Empower Home. And the reason I do that is I always do it in that 8 to 9 o'clock hour. I want to do it in the 6 o'clock hour. For those of you that don't make it that far for one reason or another, don't listen to the podcast. I've been fond of telling you that every day I get some sort of an email thing from a good friend of mine who's a realtor about all the houses in Douglas County, just keeping my finger on the pulse, And true to form, I got another one today. And this thing has 3 different houses on it, 2 that say price reduced, 1 that says new listing. Yesterday, I had 2 price increases, and 1 was a new listing. And when I combine that with the articles that are out there, you've seen them on the Gazette or online, that Colorado is one of 11 states that saw property values take a dip. Well, that to me is a signal. I'm not sure it means that everyone's going to follow suit or we're going to take a bigger dive. I don't know the answers to that, but you know who does? Gay Ribble and the Empower Home team at Keller Williams. They know these things. So you can make a decision out of panic, good or bad, like, oh, I got to buy this house right now because the price is never going to be better. Or, man, I got to get out of my house right now before the value keeps dropping. Why panic? Why make decisions based off of just some things you read on the internet? Why not go to the experts? Gay Ribble, she and the Empower Home team have been doing this for decades right here in the metro area. Nobody knows the market better than they do. They have all the statistics, and I've got this thing here. I'm supposed to read you all these numbers. The numbers don't excite me. They might excite you. What excites me is the idea that they sell more houses every year than other realtors. They sell them faster than other realtors, and they sell them for more money than other realtors. I don't know what other things you need to know about that, but wait, there's a guarantee, and that is if they don't sell your house at the price and at the timing that you guys agree upon, they make it right with the money. What's left? They take all the stress out of it. They get you out of your house for top dollar, get you into that dream home that everybody's fighting over right now. Give them a call at 833-301-SOLD, 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 or you can check them out at gayhasthebuyers.com. That's gay, G-A-Y-E, hasthebuyers.com. We're going to cut away for a break. We're going to come back and do the good stuff of the show, the most produced portion, the only produced portion of the show, which is the Thorpe Report. And then after that, You Choose the News. Stick around. It's George Brauchler on The George Show, 710 KNUS.
Why should you buy your next vehicle at Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram? We make car shopping easy. We have a huge inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles. We can even custom order. We make it easy. Easy financing, friendly staff. And when it comes to quality service, our expert technicians keep your vehicle in top shape. Visit us today off of Highway 25 and Plum Creek, or shop online at castlerockcdjr.com. Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. Car shopping made easy.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes, all in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
George Brauchler right back with you here, 710 KNUS. Always a ray of sunshine. Alexa lets us know that yesterday the sunset was at 7 p.m. and we won't see another 7 p.m. or later sunset until March 10th of 2024. Damn, Alexa, you bring the darkness with that text. That's painful.
Yeah, that is.
But you know, another ray of sunshine is the guy right through the glass right now who I'm happy to say I have no idea whether he's wearing that sequin Elton John playing thing or not.
No,
but right now with the Thorpe Report, it's our friend William.
Yeah, it's because the sequins, they bunch and they hurt sometimes.
I'm sure they can get right into the skin.
They can, and pinches the hairs. But okay, so it's on a
the
side
hairs. Why did you go there? That's
you met me. It's like my superpower. I know exactly how to just make it awful. Alrighty. Speaking of making it awful, today mostly sunny and warm, highs of 82 degrees. Sunny, breezy, warm, and highs of 80 for Friday. Saturday, first day of fall or autumn, if we're going to be high
if we're Cherry Creek.
Yes, if we are. For Cherry Creek people, it's autumn. Breezy seasonal highs of 76, sunny seasonal and 78 on Sunday. Unfortunately, 2 people are dead after a house fire in Aurora on Wednesday night. 9 people were located at a home in the 2800 block of South Oakland Circle. They were transported to hospitals Wednesday night. That's near I-225 and South Parker Road. 3 of the victims were in urgent condition and 6 were in critical condition. They were transported. 2 of the victims did die at the hospital. The Brighton Police Department is asking for your help finding the driver in a hit-and-run crash that seriously injured a woman on a bicycle. Police officers said they were called to East Bridge Street near 27th Avenue around 1:30 in the afternoon on Monday. They found a driver had left the scene after running into a 35-year-old woman as she rode her bicycle. Woman was taken to the hospital, flown to a different hospital then to be treated for the injuries. Police say the investigation revealed that it is a silver Dodge Ram pickup truck that was very likely involved, but they do not have a license number. Elsewhere, a woman walking her dog was attacked by a moose. That's near Ward in Boulder County. Happened Wednesday morning on the South St. Vrain Trail. Yeah, the moose charged the woman, headbutting and stomping her several times.
Oh, my goodness, buddy. Moose are huge.
Yeah, and they're mean. She was able to walk to a nearby neighbor's house and got help. She was transported to the local hospital. Dog has minor injuries, and the neighbor reported that it was leashed. Wildlife officers.
The moose?
No, the dog.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it'd be weird if the moose.
Leash, interesting.
Yeah, it would be. Wildlife officers not able to locate that animal, but posted warning signs. Part of it being that if you're walking a dog and you come across a moose, move away because moose view dogs as wolves, and that's a predator.
Who's the moosiest moose you know?
Oh, that's got to be Bullwinkle.
The actual correct answer from the movie Vacation.
Oh, it's
Marty
Moose.
Moose.
Name? Marty Moose.
Who's
That's right.
the moosiest moose you know?
That's right.
Marty Moose. That's the problem is we have cartoonized moose into looking like they're these affable kind of bungly little animals when instead they are, by many accounts, yours included, Billy, some of the most lethal animals out in the wild.
Oh yeah. I would much rather come across several wolves than come across a moose. Much rather.
They're so big.
Yeah,
they're so big, and they will stomp you into oblivion.
Yeah, and because they're so big, so much bigger than you, they don't care. There's a thing with wolves looking at you going, well, okay, I can't really take you down. I got it. Yeah. So
I feel the same way about tall people. If you're north of 6'4", you are a natural predator for just about everyone around you.
Yes, absolutely. I think that if they're above 6'4", we should just be granted one free junk punch just because.
If you and at certain heights that can take place with your face.
Exactly.
But if you've spent your whole life looking above people, you know what I mean? Like you see a bunch of tops of heads and it's not job related. That is that just changes your perspective on humanity.
It totally does. Yes, it makes you more erudite. It makes you feel like you have above all the riffraff that you don't have to deal with the regular stuff.
I don't like it. I don't like it.
I'm against.
Can you discriminate against tall people?
I think we should start in general.
I don't know how we do that.
Well, first of all, you start by making all the doorways shorter.
Oh, hello. I like the sound of that.
Yeah. There, see, I'm an
Make
idea
the
guy.
world fit us. Not
Yes.
Nice one, Ramaswamy.
Thank you.
Billy Ramaswamy, right?
That's exactly it.
You could be president.
I could. I want to be. Oh, no, I don't. Okay, 20-year-old Longmont man was arrested. This is awful for allegedly possessing and distributing child sexual abuse material.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, Damon Reynolds Rosa was arrested at his home in the 2000 block of Yeager Drive in Longmont yesterday. Investigation began after authorities received a tip from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. After receiving the information, they executed a search warrant on his home, and it revealed multiple electronic devices containing child sexual abuse material.
Gravy.
Yes, he's an awful person. Two Aurora police officers sat in court. We'll talk about this later for the opening statements in their trials on Wednesday. That's the Elijah McClain trial. Jury selection wrapped up on Wednesday morning. Opening statements began after lunch. And it is the Aurora Police Department trial of Randy Rodema and Jason Rosenblatt. The prosecutor, which will have an interesting story about Mr. Jonathan Bunge, with the Colorado Attorney General's office. Is he? Began by saying the evidence in the case will show beyond a reasonable doubt that both defenders violated their oaths and failed the mandates of their own police department. But again, we'll talk about Mr. Bunge a little bit later. Hundreds of Southwest Airlines flight attendants and pilots equipped with signs and megaphones lined the streets near McGuigar Square in downtown Denver Wednesday afternoon to demonstrate how dire their situation is amid ongoing contract negotiations. They chanted and were angry. The transport union workers, Local 556, represents more than 1,500 Southwest Airlines flight attendants, and they are negotiating with Southwest right now for a better contract. Also, the 8th Judicial District Attorney's Office.
That's Fort Collins, folks.
Yeah,
County.
They filed 35 additional charges against a former Poudre School District paraprofessional that's accused of child abuse. We've talked about this a-hole a while. Tyler Zanella, 36, was arrested in May for allegedly hitting a kindergartner with disabilities. He hit a kindergartner with disabilities, and the kindergartner was nonverbal, you piece of crap.
What?
Yeah. Police initially identified 6 victims through surveillance video, all of whom were at risk because they're disabled. The Poudre School District hired him in late August of
Unbelievable.
2022. He's been fired. He
Hold on,
initially
dude didn't even make it a year in the job.
Not at all.
You got to go back and find out who interviewed
Yes.
this freak show.
Yeah.
And
How did
what
you get him
what
in?
his past history was.
Yeah. He initially faced only 129 charges, including crimes against an at-risk juvenile, third-degree assault, and child abuse. Now they've tacked on an additional 35. They've got a total number of victims at 11. So this is absolutely ridiculous.
I wonder for all the people that crap talk the prosecution system and criminal justice system and all that in terms of they're just piling charges on to these to that Donald J. Trump and these other people. I wonder if when they hear this guy, they're like, more, please.
Yeah.
More charges, please. Let's go to 200.
No, not at all. We should not. We have to understand.
A single charge of child abuse would cover all the many victims and many instances that he did. Like, no, man. You want to rub this guy out of existence.
Oh, yeah, you do. The other question is, how's Joe Biden involved? Is this the Joe Biden political weaponization
because
of the DOJ?
The teacher is actually Hunter Biden. It's like the Scooby-Doo thing. He pulls the mask off and I'm like, Hunter Biden.
I would have gotten away from it if it was for you kids and your stupid dog. All right, that's all that I've got.
Kids.
I know.
All right, listen, we're going to cut away. Actually, the timing here, it feels early. I know it's not, but it feels early because there isn't a 50 in there. I'm kind of debating what to do. I was going to do a second live read for the first time ever in the 6 o'clock hour. It doesn't feel natural. I have to work myself into that. Maybe in the coming weeks we'll get there. But in the meantime, we're going to cut away for a break. When we come back, it's going to be You Choose the News. Buckle up, folks. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. Room temperature coffee, radio station coffee, right here on the George Show, 710 KNUS. Let's get it over to the fun stuff right now. It is called You Choose the News.
Yes, sir. It is that time of the morning where we play everybody's favorite fake radio news game show. You Choose the News. We have scoured the interwebs for, it can't be more than 3 minutes this morning to find stupid stories, giving them ridiculous headlines to play this fake radio news game. Alrighty, sir. Here are your stories this morning. Headline number 1, escapee caught after exhaustive search. Headline number 2, all I wanted was to break your walls. All you ever did is wreck me. Headline number 3, multiple Merlinton melodies. And headline number 4, DoorDash for criminals. Alrighty, your choices yet again are escapee caught after exhaustive search. All I wanted to do was to break your walls, and all you ever did was wreck me. Multiple Merlinton melodies, and DoorDash for the criminals.
Look, we're going to work our way to the alliteration, but I want to start with the DoorDash for criminals.
Ah, yes. Like DoorDash for criminals, recently a 53-year-old carjacking suspect was arrested after he led police on a brief chase and then delivered himself right into their laps. Yes, Barton Tabano of Nashua was fleeing from police recently in a van that had been involved in an armed carjacking earlier in the day. The van had been traveling at a high rate of speed, running red lights when it hit a vehicle going north on Maple Street. That is when Barton lost control and ended up crashing right into the Manchester Police Department building. Yes.
Oh, come
right
on,
there.
man.
It's like delivers himself right to the front door. Kaboom.
Yes.
Yes.
We just don't catch the smart ones. You know, Crowley, this is an aside.
Yeah.
Crowley has a story at some point he should tell on air about not catching the smart ones, but we sure do catch a lot of the dumb ones.
Oh, yeah, a lot of the dumb ones. I just
Good
love
Lord.
the fact that he just crashed right into the building.
The third choice that I had was an alliteration that was
Multiple Merlinton melodies.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yes, we are traveling to the wonderful place of Australia. In fact, Brisbane. Recently, the Brisbane Festival is coming up, and they want your help. They need to set a brand new world record.
Oh.
They're asking for more than 10,000 people to show up and join them in wonderful Merlinton melodies. If you are not familiar with what are Merlinton, that is the Cherry Creek word for kazoo. Yes, they are trying to set a kazoo world record.
In autumn?
Yes, in autumn, without any of the Bruins. Yes, attacking
that's
people.
Too bad.
They're going to hold it at Victoria Park. It is coming up this weekend. So basically, they're trying to get 10,000 people together to play the kazoo at the same time. So if you want to go and you've got some extra time,
Merlinton?
yes, Merlinton.
Is that Latin?
I probably spent more time finding that word to use as a headline than I did looking for the stories.
Merlinton.
Yeah,
I'm going to use that in just regular talk.
Oh,
like
good.
People don't know what it means.
No idea.
How Merlinton of you?
Yes.
And people will be like, "It is. It
Yes.
really is.
Yeah.
You're so right."
I'm
like
sorry,
nobody
I
knows.
can't join you tonight. My Merlinton is acting up.
Right.
It's a horrible.
Hey, how do you like your? Do you want Merlinton on your sandwich?
Yes, exactly.
I'm running out, but
Yeah,
yes, I
yes.
love Merlinton.
I love it.
Okay.
Yes. All right, your final choice this morning. Escapee caught after exhaustive search.
Yes, that's
that
the one right there.
All
yeah.
righty, that one. Now, this is an interesting day. Now, you remember when we had the guy running from police after he escaped from the jail in Pennsylvania? Yeah,
well,
he was on the
Long
lam.
rest, by the
Yep.
way, but yeah.
He was on the lam for about 13 days. Well, I have got one better for you.
No.
Recently, it's a story of Officer David Freites. He said that finally, after a 2-week exhaustive search, they have caught the escapee, a giant emu.
What?
Yes,
Escaped from the prison?
No, the
Oh.
emu, no, but the emu just escaped from it was a person that keeps birds and things, and so, but it escaped. The key here though is that the emu was able to avoid law enforcement for 14 days. The killer could only manage 13. So all I'm saying is maybe the bird,
man.
little more intelligent and clever than the accused killer. I don't know.
That's
Maybe
what the
not.
other inmates are going to rib
Yes,
this guy with. Man.
Exactly.
If
The
only you were an emu.
Yeah, the emu lasted
You'd
longer
still
than
be free.
you. Yes, I think that's very funny that he. Yeah.
Nice work, buddy. You did all
thanks.
three.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
we got all
man.
tee. And the other one, you missed the other one. You know that headline. You have to.
Are we going to get that for losers?
Yeah, you got it. But you got it. The key in that story is in the headline. You got to listen to the headline.
I got to listen to the headline.
Yeah.
We also missed our dang sponsor.
That means no McDonald's for us today.
Listen, when we come back, I want to talk a lot about that trial going on in the Elijah McClain case up there in Adams County. Just some weird stuff and some observations I made. Stick around. George Brauchler, 710, KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. It is hour 2 of 4. You know, at 10 o'clock, we get replaced by Chuck Kirk. Always happy-go-lucky Chuck. And then we go to Dennis Prager from 11 to 1, Gorka 1 to 3. Live and local right back here in the studio with Deb Flora. And then 4 to 7, Stephen Tubbs. Had the pleasure of seeing Stephen yesterday morning. You don't normally see Stephen in the morning. It's just one of those, it's like a vampire kind of a thing. You really only see him when it's dark outside. In your bushes outside your window. But I got to see him inside the offices yesterday. He's looking like $1 million. I think he looks more stress-free and relieved since announcing he was retiring than at any time that I've seen him in the last year or so. That could also be the rehab. I'm not sure. Nonetheless, there's a big trial going on. I have a pretty peculiar interest in this one for a lot of reasons. One, it's a criminal trial in the metro area. That's a big deal. I'm, as a guy who's been in this game about 28 years, a little more than 28 years now, I am fascinated with the way that these cases get conducted in the pursuit of justice through our system. And I'm a teacher. I've been an adjunct professor at the University of Denver College of Law for 21 years. I can't even believe I'm saying that out loud. 21 years. And I teach trial advocacy, and I do it through a couple specific ways. One is jury selection, and also there's an advanced trial ad class called litigation technology. And my buddy Dan Deasy and I have been doing this forever. So I have that kind of an interest. I travel around the country teaching trial advocacy in one form or another to prosecutors. I've done it at the International Criminal Court in The Hague. I mean, this is a career passion for me to do this. So I'm fascinated by these cases. Add to that the fact that it involves Aurora police officers. And oh, by the way, at the time that this happened, I was the district attorney whose jurisdiction included about 88% of the population of Aurora. And I work with Aurora PD all the time. Hell, we just had in the chief of police for Aurora just 2 days ago. That's also compelling to me. And the fact that it is an accusation of criminal conduct by law enforcement on an innocent member of society. Also, I mean, these are just compelling things. The things that are playing out in this courtroom division L of the Adams County Courthouse is compelling to me. And so you should know that it's totally viewable. Every portion of the trial from the opening statements until I imagine the closing arguments is going to be viewable through WebEx. WebEx is like a Zoom, Google Meets kind of a thing. It's a streaming thing. And all you have to do is you can probably Google search Colorado Judicial WebEx streaming courts, whatever. You'll get to a main page. You do the drop-down menu for Adams. You get to Courtroom Division 11. Click on that. When the camera's up and boom, you're right in there. And you get two angles. You get an angle that is sort of the bird's eye view that excludes the jury, always excludes the jury, and gives you kind of that courtroom view. And then you have a different angle that comes from someone else's desk where it's kind of a side view. Again, never getting the jury, and you should never get the jury. We didn't get to see any jury selection. I'm still trying to get my hands on the jury questionnaires. I can, in my mind, probably come up with what I believe is about a 90% solution for what they asked on those questions, but I really want to see, and I wanted to be a fly on the wall to watch the jury selection to see who those jurors were. Now, based on reporting since yesterday, here's what we know about what took place. And those opening statements originally, folks, were supposed to start at 10:30 a.m., like right after we got off the radio. Nope. Then it was going to be 1:30. Then it was going to be 2:30. These things didn't get underway until I think, God, almost closer to 3 o'clock. They got done with opening statements. Each side was permitted 50 minutes to give an opening statement. When I say each side, based on my own calculations, informal as they were, the defense did not get 50 minutes for each defendant. That's not how it looked like it added up to me. It looked like to me that each defendant was afforded whatever portion of that 50 minutes that they had. So the prosecution got 50 minutes and then the defense did. But on that jury, there appears to be, based on the description in the newspaper, no African Americans at all. And the reason that that's significant is because the victim in this case is African American, and the area where this thing occurred, I presume, is one that has, and by the way, Aurora, the most diverse city in the state of Colorado, by just about every single measure, has the same proportion of African Americans as Denver, but it's like number one for, God, I want to say Asian Americans, maybe number 4 for Latino, Hispanic. Arapahoe County itself, at least the last time I checked, #1 county in terms of percentage of women, made a popular, very, very, very diverse city. That's an important point because the jury here is comprised of 12 people, none of whom are African American. Now, at first blush, especially if you're someone who's skeptical of the system, you're like, well, how can that be a jury of the peers? Well, it does. The racial composition of the jury matters only to a certain extent. There is no, hey, 10% of the population is African American, so 10% of the jury has to be African. That wouldn't make any sense. And that kind of quote unquote equity driven, outcome driven analysis should never be applied to the criminal justice system. And people on the left keep trying to shoehorn it in there. But I do think it's noteworthy that there are no African Americans, based on this description by the media, on the jury. 2 white officers, by the way, Rodema and Rosenblatt. So, I tune into this thing after delay after delay after delay. I've got a bunch of business things I'm trying to juggle in between, and I've got this lunch meeting, and I keep looking down at my phone like, when are they going to phone calls? And finally it gets underway. And so the opening statements, now, if you think about this, the opening statements become this first best opportunity to lay out your theory of the case. Now, I'll tell you why I think it gets overplayed in trial advocacy courses, the importance of it. But the first thing I noticed was the dude that stood up on behalf of us, you and me, the state of Colorado. I've never heard of this guy before in my life. That's weird, right? Like, I've been in the game about 3 decades. You would think it would be very hard to surprise me with a prosecutor, even from the AG's office, that I've never heard of before. But there's good reason why I've never heard of this guy. He goes by Chris Bunge, B-U-N-G-E, but his full name, I think, is Jonathan Christopher Bunge, and that's because he is not a licensed attorney in the state of Colorado. Folks, that is a pull the arm off the record player moment. We have a person hired by the Attorney General's office who is not a licensed Colorado attorney to try perhaps the biggest criminal case the Attorney General's office, this Attorney General, has ever handled. It's weird. It is weird. I would say unprecedented in my career because I don't know of any other office that has said we don't have the horsepower to try this case ourselves. I don't know that the media has ever asked Phil Weiser, why did you have to go hire someone from outside the state of Colorado? Now, the question you might ask is, well, I mean, maybe he's a specialist in this area. Nope. Maybe he's a prosecutor from another state that has great experience in holding officers accountable for murder and manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide and assault and crimes like, nope. This cat is a partner in a civil law firm in Chicago. That's right. You and I are footing the bill for a prosecution of a crime that took place here in Colorado, allegedly committed by Colorado resident police officers against a Colorado resident in a Colorado courtroom with a Colorado jury being prosecuted by a Chicago civil lawyer. I mean, the questions I have, and we are going to get to the bottom of this. I asked Billy to ask the AG's office to just tell us by email. We're going to get to the bottom of this. The word I heard is the other folks that are in the courtroom, they're also not from Colorado. Now, maybe they're licensed attorneys now in Colorado. I don't know. I just want to get to the bottom of it. But this lead prosecutor, this guy who gave the opening statement in this biggest case, he's not one of us. He doesn't live here. He doesn't pay taxes here. As far as we know, he has no interest here. But we know this. He's not licensed to practice law in the state of Colorado. There's a mechanism by which, though, you can practice in another state with the permission of the courts. And that's called pro hoc vice. It's a Latin term that I have no damn clue what it means. But what it is a way for you to practice if another Colorado licensed attorney agrees to supervise you to ensure that you comply with our rules, our ethics, and all that other stuff. And so my question is, well, who's supervising this guy? As you know, Phil Weiser will be nowhere near the courtroom unless and until they secure a conviction. You will never hear from Phil Weiser on this case. He's not going to be in the courtroom. I don't think he was there yesterday. This isn't like Michael Allen from the 4th Judicial District. Biggest case in my jurisdiction, I'm at the table. I'm the dude giving the opening. It's not like that. This is, is this the biggest case I've ever handled? Let's go find a civil partner in a law firm in Chicago who's never been a local prosecutor, isn't licensed in the state of Colorado, and we're going to get them to try this case. Doesn't that seem weird to you at all? When did we start outsourcing prosecution of local crime to partners in bigwig civil firms in other states? I mean, listen, I can see a circumstance where it makes sense, right? Like, let's say you have, I'm going to make this up, Mitch Morrissey, former DA from Denver and an accomplished trial attorney. This dude brings the heat. Let's say Mitch moved out of state, became a civil lawyer somewhere, and then there was some big crime that took place in Denver or a retrial of one of his cases. And then then Mitch was brought back, and then we'd be like, I totally get it. What's this guy's connection? How did Phil find this guy? Was there a national search? Did they go to monsters.com and say, we need someone to try this criminal case? I mean, the questions are huge, aren't they? Like, is there nobody in the Attorney General's office competent enough to lead the prosecution of this? And if that's true, whose fault is that? Whose fault is it that the team that the Attorney General has under his roof isn't viewed by the Attorney General as competent enough to try this case? Now, the mainstream media, they've asked nothing about this. They've done no inquiry. The next question is, what are we paying a partner in a Chicago civil law firm to come here and try our cases for us? How many taxpayer dollars are we spending? Is this guy, maybe he's doing it for gratis. He's just so moved by the case itself, he's willing to do it pro bono. Now, I know that one. That's for free. But I don't think that's probably true. Did he get hired on the regular old state scale for prosecutors? Or does he have some sort of special contract? These are all things the public is entitled to know, and we're going to ask the questions. If we can't get an answer from the comms guy, who has been the guy that has been telling Billy things like, oh, Phil will come on the radio with you when the Rockies win the World Series, that clown, that guy, we'll wait for him to say no, and then we're going to Cora request it. That's Colorado Open Records Act. And then when they try to block us on that, I will go to court for free. I'll get Steve Zansberg somehow. We'll figure out a way to come up with a couple bucks. We're going to get to the bottom of this. We're going to get to the answer. Folks, in 30 years of doing this, I've never, ever, never heard of a local prosecutor's office going outside the state of Colorado to hire a lead counsel on a case, and someone who is not a criminal prosecutor at the state level. I checked out this guy's bio. He's wicked smart. I'm sure he's wicked smart, very accomplished. It says on his bio on his bigwig law firm out of Chicago, it says this dude has represented clients against different state AG's offices. So it makes me wonder, is that what happened here? This guy come in and clean Phil's clock, and he was so impressed with him, he hired him to handle his criminal case? Are there no DAs out there that are able or willing to work with Phil to prosecute this case? And if that's true, what does that say? My God, this has taken place in the 17th Judicial District. Brian Mason is a Democrat. He is a DA. He would love to be the Attorney General someday. I think the question has to be asked of Brian, were you asked by Phil to provide prosecutors, and why didn't you? You have a ton of prosecutors, dozens and dozens and dozens of prosecutors. Did nobody want to try this case for Phil? Why not? And I think Phil needs to be asked, was this case so special, so different that you had to go outside the state of Colorado to hire for it? We're not even in the opening statement discussion on this part yet, folks, because this blew my mind, and nobody in the mainstream media is talking about it. Somebody needs to ask the Attorney General, why couldn't you find somebody good enough to try this case under your own roof, or at least within the borders of the state of Colorado, or, my God, at least a licensed attorney? By the way, do you know how easy it is to become a licensed attorney in the state of Colorado? You can waive in after 5 years of practice. This guy's been practicing a little bit longer than Phil has. He could have waived in. That means applied to the Supreme Court and got admitted. He'd have to comply with all of our rules and pay the fees and all that. He could have done that. This guy doesn't even want to be, it looks like, a Colorado attorney, because he's working under permission of the court on a one-case, one-off basis. Isn't that mind-blowing? Local cops, local crime, local victim, local laws, Chicago civil bigwig law firm partner hired by the AG's office to come try the case. Honestly, it's a bit scandalous. The message that it sends is, I don't have anybody good enough to do this. Certainly not anybody as good as this guy. This dude was a former U.S. attorney, not the U.S. attorney, of course, an assistant U.S. attorney somewhere. And he did some white collar stuff, I guess, involving some police. But this ain't that. This isn't a paper crime. I don't know, folks. The question's got to be asked. If the mainstream media won't do it, it's going to be left to idiots like Billy and I. And I don't know that I'm smart enough to get to the answer the way that the mainstream media would. And certainly the AG's office feels far more comfortable giving us the shiver, the blowback than they are other mainstream media. But man, I'd love it if Kyle Clark asked, like, what's the deal? Do we not have any prosecutors good enough or willing? That's the part I think. There's two things going on here. Either Phil doesn't trust his own people to be good enough to try this case, which says something, because he's got them on his team. He hired them. They're there. And this guy has blown up the staff of the AG's office. There's an executive component, administrative component of the office. It has grown faster under Phil than any 3 preceding attorneys general in terms of budget and personnel. It has exploded. And you're telling me at a time when he's had this case, and by the way, he didn't get this case dropped on him yesterday, and he's like scrambling around like, oh my God, I need a... This happened in 2019. He was assigned this case in 2020, maybe 2021 at the latest. He's had years to get ready for this. Folks, I don't know what's going on. And by the way, in no way is that a comment on the substance of the case, the righteousness of the case, or what will happen with the case. It is just freaking bizarre. Have never heard of it before. Is that where we're at now? We're now going to use taxpayer money to pay someone from outside the state to prosecute our state crimes? It's kind of offensive. If you're on Phil's staff, you got to be looking around like, am I not good enough? I want to know who the other 2 folks are at the table. I saw them on the video. I don't recognize those people. I mean, I've only been doing this to 28 years. None of those people look familiar to me. That's weird. Are those civil people too that he just converted over to a criminal case? I don't know, man. I don't know. I mean, is it for plausible deniability? Like if they lose this, then that dude gets on a plane, probably a private plane, and flies back to Chicago, and we're left with, well, the guy I hired, he seemed really good. He came highly recommended. I saw his LinkedIn page. What are we doing? Yeah, I don't get it. That's not even the opening statement stuff. And I do want to talk to you about the opening statement stuff, because this guy, this big time private lawyer for a Chicago law firm who isn't a licensed Colorado attorney, who's being supervised by God knows who inside that courtroom. He gave the opening, and then we had Reed Elkis representing Rudima, and I think it was Harvey Steinberg representing Rosenblatt. I want to talk to you about those. I hope you find this stuff interesting and insightful, especially when we get into the details of this, because for me, this is kind of like the Super Bowl. This is like doing an analysis of the Super Bowl, because big cases like this don't come around all the time. By the way, man, how many other civil attorneys from other states has Phil hired to go do our work with our taxpayer money? Dude's not even going to spend it here. Whatever he's getting paid, he's taking back to Chicago. I mean, anyway, we're going to get to the bottom of this. One thing I want you to think about and getting to the bottom of is your own dental health. Because I've got coming up here, I'm not going to give you the exact date because I don't want you to show up there and criticize me as I'm getting work done inside my mouth. But sometime in the month of October, and I'm going to give you a little hint in the front half, I'm going to go back down to our good friends, Doctors Richter and Snyder at Twin Aspen Dental, right there at about Parker and Stroh. It's so easy to get to. And I'm going to have them do the routine work that they do so well, that preventative care. They get in twice a year. They do the x-rays when they need to. They look in there, they poke, they prod, they floss. And frankly, we have great conversation. We laugh a lot in there. Shiloh, who I've had twice now, she's just so funny, so wonderful. And Richter and Snyder, they're just personable, good people. And they're happy to joke around with you, but they also just cut to the quick, man, when they tell you, here's what I'm seeing, here's what I'm not seeing. It's the kind of dentist office I remember growing up with when I used to go to Dr. Shaver, way out there for a long time, retired Air Force officer, dentist, did a great job. Loved that dude, but it felt like he was just part of the neighborhood. That's the feel they have. They're not one of these big box chain kind of dental places. I'm sure they do a fine job. If you're looking though for something more community, more neighborhoody, more personal, where you're not just another patient, you're someone that they remember, Twin Aspen Dental is the place for you. And maybe you're not into that. Maybe you just want to get in, get it done, and get going. Okay. But if you're looking for a little bit more, I'd go to Twin Aspen Dental. That's what I do. Give them a call at 303-841-7466, 303-841-7466. You go to twinaspendentalcenter.com to check them out, but have that phone call, make that appointment. I got texts coming in here. I'll answer these too when we come back. If you got questions, if you got thoughts on this, does this seem right to you to outsource the prosecution of the biggest criminal case this AG will likely ever handle to a civil partner in a Chicago law firm? WTF up next. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS, following up on this conversation. Had some texts, by the way, on this, talking about the opening statements. We really didn't even get to the opening statements on the Elijah McClain case against Rodema and Rosenblatt. Those are the two former Aurora police officers who are part of this trial. There's going to be three, as you know. The two paramedics come next, and then I think the last one is Nate Woodyard. If it gets that far, lead prosecutor for purposes of the trial, and the guy who gave the opening statement yesterday is not a licensed attorney from the state of Colorado. Man, he could have run for the Republican nomination for AG against John Kellner at the state assembly, because 1/3 of those smarties voted for whoever. What was that clown's name? Jesus, he wasn't even a Republican either. Nonetheless, a civil guy out of a civil firm. Not a licensed attorney in the state of Colorado, hired by the AG's office to come prosecute this case for reasons no one's ever asked the attorney general. My God, I hope they do now. So here's some of the text. Why isn't the 17th JD handling this case? Very fair question. They don't have jurisdiction over it. So what happened is, if you'll recall, the 17th Judicial District DA was a guy named Dave Young. They did have jurisdiction over it. And Dave Young, armed with the medical examiner's report that said, I can tell you the factors that led to his death. I can't tell you which one caused the death of this kid. Dave said, I can't prove this beyond a reasonable doubt. No charges. And then nothing happened, as you recall, until the change.org petition reached like 4.5 million. And then, of course, that spurred the governor into action, because the two ways to get him to do anything are change.org and Kim Kardashian. And he jumped in on this, and using powers that are completely legitimate. I don't know that he used them legitimately, but legitimate powers that he has. He assigned Phil to handle the investigation and prosecution of this case. 3 separate executive orders, because they kept getting criticized, because one seemed like they were presuming that there was criminal conduct by the police, and the other one seemed like it was suggesting there wasn't criminal. All this other, so 3 separate executive orders. And finally, Weiser gets this dumped in his lap. That means the DA's office in the 17th doesn't have any authority over the case anymore. Only Phil does. But the trial still has to take place where the crime was committed, short of a change of venue. And so that means it's being tried in Adams County case with an Adams County jury and an Adams County judge, with, by the way, local defense attorneys. These guys have been around. Elkis and Steinberg have been around for decades in our local courtrooms. As far as I know, Mr. Civil Chicago guy, this is his first time ever in a Adams County courtroom. Who knows, other than this case. But anyway, they're going to give the opening statements. They're each given 50 minutes. There's a ton of delay. And in part, what my understanding is the delay is because all of a sudden there were a bunch of Batson challenges as to strikes that were made by the prosecution and some arguments made about how the defense struck people. And the Batson challenges, if you're not familiar, are ones that say that you can use a peremptory challenge. There's two kinds of challenges to remove jurors. One is for cause. Cause means you're just presumed incapable of being unbiased or being fit for this jury. So, for instance, if you're a compensated member of a law enforcement organization, your cause removed off of a jury on a criminal case, not a civil case, on a criminal case. If you're the landlord or the employer or an employee or whatever of one of the parties to the case, you can't sit. You see what I'm saying? So cause is one of those ones that's pretty easy. Relatives, friends, business partners, all these other things got to be caused off of there. But you also get peremptory challenges, and peremptory challenges are like, I don't want this to sound violent, but they're like this bullets in a gun. And you can use those for almost any purpose. And the almost means you can't use them for certain prohibited purposes. Like, I want to exclude all the women off this jury. I want to exclude all of the white guys off of this jury. You can't use it for things like that. Batson is an old U.S. Supreme Court case that stands for the proposition that you can't use them to strike African Americans or people based on race, not just African Americans. So there was a big argument behind closed doors. I don't get, by the way, how these arguments get to take place outside the presence of the media. And I was told by a member of the media they were locked out of the courtroom for these arguments, that they were held in private. How is that possible in America? You file a motion, you file an objection, you make an argument. They may be outside the presence of the jury, the fact finder, but how do you exclude the planet Earth from this in an American courtroom? I don't know. No cameras, no media. That seems awfully fishy to me. I don't get it. Those arguments should be had on the record in front of everybody in America, and they weren't. And I'm sure the argument will be, whoa, we made a record. There's a transcript. Someday, somewhere, someone can pay for a transcript and see what happened. Not good enough. But nonetheless, that was the delay. So then they get into the opening statement. And if you think about this, these men and women that make up the prosecution team, and by the way, it's all men that I can tell, these men have had so much time to get ready for this case, eons to get ready for this case. The opening statement becomes not the first time the jury hears from a side, because that's jury selection. And you can do a lot to introduce yourself to the jury and sort of shape the narrative in jury selection. That's true. But this will be the first time they get a full appreciation for your theory of the case. And if you listen to the 6 o'clock hour yesterday with Billy and I, we talked a lot about the theory of the case and the different things. And can you connect these dots? And so here it is. Opening statement. There's a lot of theories on the way to do this. Some of them effective. Some of them like the ones that we saw in the courtroom yesterday, and I'll tell you about them. The jury knows who you are already, okay? You've been introduced to the jury by freaking name by the judge more than once. And the reason you are is because you have to ask the jury, do you have a relationship with any of these people at the table? Do you know any of these people? That's for the cause stuff. So it's not like you stand up to talk and people are like, who's that guy? They know who you are. You've had 3 days of jury selection. It's freeing then to stand up and just start. The jury now knows, my God, jury selection's over. I'm on the jury. This is the kickoff to the Super Bowl. They're ready to go. And for that first, I'd say 60 seconds, you own their attention as an attorney. Now, you can do one of two things. You can give them reason to continue to give you their attention, or you can start the process of having them tune you out, look away, get distracted by slides and all that other stuff. There's stuff in between that can take place, but that's really the approach. So the very first thing you say to the jury matters in a way that the things in the middle don't. It matters in a way that the last thing you say doesn't. And that's the second most important thing you'll leave them with. That kickoff, that first one, it is the attention grabber, right? I've seen this done well by so many people, not me. I've seen it done poorly by even more people, not me. For instance, for the Aurora Theater case, to start off with a picture of that open door behind theater number 9, there's blood marks on the cement, and there's that rifle that was used laying right by the door, ditched there. And start off with anything other than let's get it on, right? Like, you know that something bad has happened. And it begins with, through this door is horror. Through this door are bullets, blood, brains, and bodies. Through this door, one man came who believed that his love life had ended, his career was over. He came with a lifetime of hatred in his heart and a 2.5-month plan for mass murder in his mind. And then it went on from there. We play a 911 call, boom, 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 boom. And that's not to say that there aren't a billion ways to do that right. I'm telling you how I chose to do it as an example of, this is the moment you get and reel in the jury for the rest of your opening. There's another way to do this, and it's the way that you hear a lot in law schools, and it's the way that you never see in court on TV, but you see in court in real life all the time, and it's a head scratcher. So I typed down, I can't play the sound because I don't own it. I asked the court for it, and because apparently we didn't get in on the expanded media coverage request within the appropriate period of time, the court's just like, no, you can't have access to this, which is very transparent. This, I swear to you, these are the words I typed down from this guy, from Chicago civil lawyer. First words out of his mouth, biggest case in state of Colorado right now. Good afternoon and congratulations. Swear to God. I am Chris Bunge. Thank you for your service. And then it went on from there. I have taught trial advocacy, as I've said, all over the country, all over the world for 20 years. I counsel against this exact beginning every single time. Introducing yourself is dumb. They know who you are. And more importantly, they don't care. They just want to know what's going on with the case. So he spends the first couple and by the way, he's not alone in this. Defense attorney's going to do this too. I'll tell you about that in a minute. He's not alone in this. But this is this sort of weird, feel-good, working the nerves out kind of thing that you expect from a junior attorney to walk out there and be like, hello, my name is Joey Jojo Jr. Shabadoo. I am the prosecutor on the case. An opening statement is like a map. And on that map, we will... It's just nonsense. It is ineffective, and it's dull. But that's how we started with the civil lawyer from Chicago who isn't licensed here in Colorado. He then goes through this. He looks a lot back at the screen behind him where he has slides. He looks a lot back in there and getting sucked into that bug zapper. I'm telling you, when you take your eyes off the jury, they take their eyes off of you. And the mistake that too many people make with the use of media and opening statements is they think that that message is better through that than them. They're wrong. You are the messenger. You need them to be focused on you. Nonetheless, turns around a bunch, points to the oath that the Aurora guys took. Then gets into some things that, folks, I don't know how it's admissible yet. And I didn't hear any objections from the defense. I don't know if they argued about this in motions in limine. But then the attorney goes through, and it's smart to do this, by the way. This is tactically smart. I just don't know how it's admissible. He goes through a description of who Elijah McClain is and the fact that he's a massage therapist at Massage Envy, and that it took 800 hours to get his massage therapy license, and that he is cold all the time, and his coworkers will say that he's cold all the time, and that he wears a coat all the time. And while all of that is true, and all of that is worthy of some sympathy and can explain things from Elijah's point of view, it is wholly irrelevant to what the police did that night, because as you're probably thinking to yourself right now, they don't know any of that. How is it relevant that this victim, this innocent kid, was a massage therapist that took 800 hours to get his massage therapy? How is that relevant to what the cops did that night? How is it relevant to how his body responded to what the cops did that night? It's not. It is meant to make you sympathetic towards the victim. And while it's smart for the prosecutor to do that, I have no damn idea why the judge would let that in. That, to me, does not strike me as relevant at all. The civil guy from Chicago, the non-licensed Colorado lawyer, by the way, a lot of hand gestures, pointing at the jury, pointing. I mean, dude can't talk without his hands. Not Italian, also, by the way. They're also, both sides have gone out of their way to, and I'm talking defense too, to no longer refer to their clients as officer. And I realize they may not be anymore, but it's interesting. They've all gone towards Mr. and Mr. and Mr. and Mr. I never use Mr. And in part, I think Mr. is a courtesy that's extended to people that are like you and me. That's a courtesy and a respect we pay each other. If I'm prosecuting a case, I'll use the full name or the last name. There's no reason for Mr., in my opinion. It's just not that kind of a courtesy that you extend to them. So he goes on and he does this. Something else that he said that I took down as notes was that the evidence is going to show that anyone in the situation that Elijah was in when he was grabbed would tense up, because the officers are like, dude, totally tensed up on us. It had us escalate this thing. And he's going to say, the evidence will show that anyone in this situation would tense up. Well, now I'm interested. Are they bringing an expert in? Is the judge going to let an expert in to say that Elijah McClain's response to being grabbed up was predictable? That they should have known it was going to be that way? I mean, just very interesting things. What I found fascinating, given Billy's and my conversation yesterday in the 6 o'clock hour, was out of 50-ish minutes that this guy has to give his opening statement, my guess is, and it's telling about how each side will focus in this case, less than 10% was spent on the medical examiner's reports, on the new experts that Phil went out and handpicked. Maybe the Chicago guy handpicked them. I don't know. They're also not from Colorado. The experts that these guys went out to find to go convince a Colorado jury with a Chicago lawyer, they're also not from Colorado. But he spends maybe 5 minutes or less talking about that piece of the case. That is a huge part of the case, right? Like the causation of death, big deal. And so the defense, and we'll get to the defense after I come back from this break, the defense spends far more time going through the reports from the medical examiner and the experts that weighed in on this thing. And this is going to tell you exactly where this case is going to go and who's going to emphasize what. It's fascinating. They're going to be in court here while we're on the radio. And I just wish I could listen to this thing. In my opinion, it's a huge disservice to the community to only allow people to watch live stream and not go back and watch it, because there are hardworking folks like you, like me, like Billy, who want to go watch this thing. It's an important case. If these cops are good for killing this kid, then by God, the public ought to know about it and how it happened. But if they're not good for this, we should also get to know what kind of case the Attorney General's office has brought us through a civil attorney from Chicago. We should get to know that. When we come back, I'll talk to you a little bit about the defendants, and there's two of them, two defense attorneys, Elkis and Steinberg. We'll talk about their opening statements as well. And then today we get underway with the prosecution's case. Not sure who the first witness is going to be, but if they're smart, it'll be somebody compelling that will try to win the jury back to them. Because that opening statement, if I had to grade it, B-. It wasn't incompetent at all. It was fine, but B-. It just wasn't. I don't know, man. I don't know how else to describe it. If you could ever go back and watch it, I'd love to get your opinion on it. It is just, I shrugged. I was like, good enough. But it didn't knock my socks off. I didn't walk out of there feeling like, damn, man, that dude owned the room. That dude's narrative is going to be hard to beat. I didn't feel that way at all. And that in and of itself is a win for the defense on facts like this. Prosecution is playing for sympathy. Defense is swimming upstream, fighting against sympathy. That's what this case comes down to. Look, when we come back, I'll talk to you a little bit more about this. Happy to take your calls. Got some on the line, 303-696-1971. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Why should you buy your next vehicle at Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram? We make car shopping easy. We have a huge inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles. We can even custom order. We make it easy. Easy financing, friendly staff. And when it comes to quality service, our expert technicians keep your vehicle in top shape. Visit us today off of Highway 25 and Plum Creek, or shop online at castlerockcdjr.com. Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. Car shopping made easy.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes. All in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. I want to keep having this conversation with you. Listen, this is one of the prices you pay, so to speak, for having the former prosecutor guy as your morning radio host. There are just some things I am much more sensitive to and myopically focused on. You know that crime is one of them. But when we get into the courtroom stuff, I'm telling you, I took time out of my day to listen to all of these opening statements. Even if I didn't have this job, I would have done it, because this is something that's a passion of mine, is doing this job correctly and trying to understand how we apply this very, very complicated, and it's almost like a sledgehammer criminal justice system to some of these cases in an attempt to get justice. Add to that, and I feel like I always have to give this disclaimer when I'm critical of Phil, even though he's deserving of criticism regardless of who you are, is that I was the Republican nominee for Attorney General in 2018, and I lost to Phil, for those of you that don't know that. And I want to make sure it's clear. Free, fair election. It was the will of the Colorado voters. I accept it. He is the duly elected and reelected AG. None of that other stuff factors into this. So for those that are like, it's sour grapes and you're just upset. And it's like, yeah, listen, does it haunt me? Sure. I haven't slept a wink since I lost to the professor, but that has nothing to do with this. This is Gong Show-like. I mean, I do not understand hiring a dude from a Chicago law firm to try a case. I got Frank from Golden. I think Frank's an attorney. I want to have a conversation with him about his experience with something like this. But we came back from that break so late, I'd only be able to give Frank seconds, and Frank's worth more than that. In fact, every caller we get at 303-696-1971 is worth more than that. So listen, stick around. Stay with me on this journey. You're not going to get this analysis of this kind of a case anywhere else in the state of Colorado. Nobody will dedicate this kind of time and this kind of analysis to it, but it's a big deal and it matters. I hope it matters to you too. So you stick around. We'll continue this conversation. I'll talk to you about the defense openings, and then maybe we'll get a sense of what to expect coming up to today. George Brauchler on the George Show at 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS, halfway through the Thursday show, picking up where we left off. Just a quick recap before we get to Frank at 303-696-1971. I spent the last hour, I don't know, waxing, waning, riffing, something about the opening statements in the Elijah McClain case. It's actually the people of the state of Colorado versus former police officers Rodema and Rosenblatt. Two of the five defendants that have been accused by a grand jury, really by the Attorney General's office, of having led to the death of Elijah McClain. Now, it's not a civil case, it's criminal. So they've outright accused them, weirdly, of manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide. Weird. It's like charging someone with first and second degree murder. It's just weird. But nonetheless, that and second degree assault. Keep in mind in this trial, if a juror were to sit there and feel some sympathy for Elijah, but at the same time think, man, I don't think they've proved the cops have led to his death. If the compromise verdict is assault, that's a win for the AG's office because those guys will go to prison. It's a 5 to 16-year mandatory prison sentence, whereas the manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide, those are just probation-eligible charges. And if you're head-scratching, like how can causing the death, ask the legislature. Okay, that's where they're at. Nonetheless, opening statements yesterday, the breaking news, and I say it's breaking not because it's some secret, but because ain't nobody talking about it, is the guy that gave the opening statement for the prosecution for the people of the state of Colorado isn't even a people of the state of Colorado. He's a people of the state of Illinois. He's an attorney, a partner in some civil law firm out in Chicago that isn't even licensed to practice law here in the state of Colorado, unheard of in criminal prosecution. But he gave the opening statement. I went through a bunch of detail with it. Overall score, I'd say B minus. It just wasn't impressive to me. It did the job, I suppose, to get it out there. I finished by telling you that he spent maybe 10% of his 50-minute time, maybe, talking about the actual causation of death. He spent, I think, as much time talking about Elijah McClain being a licensed therapist at Massage Envy as much as he did talking about the actual medical examiner's reports and stuff like that. So that gives you some sense of where I think they believe the weakness in the case is. They're going to play up the sympathy, play down the science. And if you're the defense, you do exactly the opposite. And that's what we'll talk about here in a moment. But we love the callers at 303-696-1971. I'd love to hear your thoughts so far on this. I mean, any critique at all on that last hour, but also your thoughts on we're spending taxpayer money to go hire someone outside the state who isn't even a prosecutor to come here and try our cases because ... Phil, anyone? Nobody good enough on your team? 303-696-1971. Frank, you're on 710. Frank, what do you think?
Hey, George. Hey, I've seen firsthand kind of when a hot shot, heavy hitter team of out-of-state attorneys came in to try a case, and it was a very suboptimal outcome. Let me put it that way. But my overall observation, and I don't know if this is why there was a suboptimal outcome, but I think it's just human nature, is that if you're not a local person, a local attorney familiar with players, familiar with the courts, familiar with opposing counsel and things like that, you just don't have the level of investment that a local person has. And I think that can bleed through to jurors, to judges, to everybody. And if you know in the back of your head, you're basically here for a one-off, and then you just get to skedaddle after soiling the nest, that it affects the outcome. It really can affect the outcome. And I think it's not so much a point to specifics, but just the way people feel about it, the way others feel about it, it affects things. And I think that could happen here. I also think, George, I can't imagine, even if you get through the Cora request stuff, because I'm sure they're just going to give you the middle finger initially, but it's going to come back so redacted and so much claimed privilege that, you're going to have to fight through all that too. But I really wonder if the state, has the party. I'd like to know how they negotiated a rate for these people, because I can't imagine that this rate isn't anything except way through the roof. And I would imagine that in this type of a one-off situation, the state had some leverage to try to get that rate down on an hourly basis, but these guys aren't working for free. I mean, it's really galling to me. I can't imagine that you have an army of AGs now.
I know. This guy has grown the AG's office like no two AGs before him. The budget has exploded. They're into everything. I mean, my God, they've hired attorneys to file amicus on losing amicus, by the way, on all sorts of cases. And we got to go outside the state of Colorado. There are hundreds of prosecutors in the state of Colorado. He's got the largest government law firm, maybe the largest law firm in the state of Colorado under his roof. And he's got to go to Chicago to get a civil guy to come try this case.
Is it possible? And I'm trying to be devil's advocate here. Is it possible that this guy has some unique expertise in some of the causation issues with the Elijah McClain case? Because there is some medical causation underlying problems with the case, but I don't. But I
listen.
Doubt that
Frank, you're asking a question that I had not even thought of. If this guy or his firm have any connection at all to any of the civil suits that are going on, holy conflict of interest, holy crazy. I can't even believe Phil's that reckless. Even though the guy had never practiced law before he became AG, I can't even imagine he'd be that reckless. That would be crack smoke crazy. And I think that the local guys here were Quisar, I think is the Muhammad can't remember. I think those are the dudes that tuned up Aurora over the settlement in this case for jillions of bucks. But if he was related in some way to that would be nuts. I do want to know how much he's getting paid, but I do leave open the possibility. I don't know this guy. Maybe he's the nicest guy on the planet Earth. And, he was asked to do this case and he's like, I believe in it so much, I'm going to do it pro bono. I mean, maybe that's true. And my hat would be off to him for it. It would not change the question. What? What? Why? Is there no, I mean, there's a guy under the roof out there, Rob Shapiro. I've known Rob since we were in ROTC together 1 billion years ago. Dude's a legit prosecutor, spent a long time in Boulder, been at the AG's office. He's done a lot of their huge cases. He can't do this case. He can't be on this case. Hey, are we going to hear they're just too busy? They're so busy.
I don't accept that. They have resources all over the place. And the whole situation, George, there could be underlying reasons we're just not yet familiar with.
Agreed.
But at first blush, the whole thing makes zero sense. I mean, that's my take is that it seems to me if we're looking at this as a burden of proof issue, the burden's on the AG's office to show us why this is the arrangement. Well, because I don't get it.
You're right. And I'd love to, prior to now we're in trial, I would love to have had the mainstream media do an analysis and some questioning of the AG on this. This, by the way, the answers of who these attorneys are and the contract with them, they're not governed by any sort of 3.6, 3.8 rules on pretrial publicity, or they can't have any impact on that. I just want to know. I would like some of the big mainstream media folks out there who have numbers in front of their stations, like single digit numbers, the 9s, the 7s, the 4s, maybe even the double digits, like 31. I just want them to reach out and be like, hey, can you tell us about this? Can we see the contract you have for him? And why? Why are you just so busy you can't find somebody in the state of Colorado to try this case?
It makes no sense. At first blush here, I'm just shaking my head saying, what? Why would this happen?
I would like to know, Frank, if you ever had the chance. And again, they don't record these things. So I hope that someday they'll allow the media outlets that were allowed to record. And if you got in early, before the time ran out, you could record them and use snippets. I hope that they will allow them to release the full audio at some point after the trial. I'd just be interested to know your take. Maybe I'm just too jaded on this and I'm being too critical on the opening, but I was just underwhelmed. I'm like, you had forever to prepare for this case and you begin with good afternoon and congratulations. My name is Chris. I'm like, what? That's your start?
That puts you to sleep right away. There's
Yawner. Yawn fest. Hey, Frank, thanks, man. Thanks for holding on too. I always appreciate the phone call. Sounds like Frank's been in courtrooms, hopefully not as a defendant, but in courtrooms for other reasons. Got some text in here. Makes one wonder if this is just giving a favor to someone for their kid to get some experience or build a name. I don't think so. And I say that because this isn't some young pup dude. This dude's been around the block. He was a Supreme Court law clerk. And as we know, if you've been a Supreme Court law clerk, you're the smartest, best looking, geniusy person out there, because you know who else was? Phil Weiser. He'll tell you that. He was, I think, Byron White's. And then when Byron stepped down, he was handed off to RGB. I'm sorry. Yeah, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, RBG. Good Lord. Good Lord. And this is a great question. Congratulations for what? I don't know. I wanted to go back and hear it again, but I swear to you, he said good afternoon and congratulations. That's what I heard. Now, if that's wrong, I will correct it, but I can't go back and listen to it again. But I was typing while he was, and I thought, congratulations, like you've been selected or you've made it or we're starting. I couldn't, because you can't see the jury. You can't tell if they smile back and all that other stuff. So I don't know. Maybe it was endearing. It just didn't make any sense to me in that context. Let's talk about the defense, though. So the defense, I think, based on my math here, had the same 50 minutes that the prosecutor from Chicago had, the civil attorney from Chicago had. And it looks like they probably divided it up. So the first person to go was for Officer Rodema, and that was Reed Elkis. Now, Reed is part of a law firm called Elkis Sisson, and it has been around a long time in one form or another, and they do a ton of law enforcement defense. They're usually on retainer by an FOP, by a police association. They do all the internal affairs stuff, defending officers, the criminal stuff, the civil stuff. These guys are kind of like a one-stop shop for law enforcement when they run into trouble, administrative, criminal, or otherwise. So these guys have been in the game and in courtrooms, by the way, a lot. And I've met both these guys, and they are legit trial attorneys. I mean, they go to trial enough. Having said that, Reed starts off his opening statement with, "My name is Reed Elkis. I am an attorney that represents," and I'm like, damn, man, you didn't need to start there. And then he gets into the opening statement part after that. And I thought, Reed, you didn't need to start there. You could have they know who you are because you've been at the damn table. There was jury, so they know this, right? Like, get in it, get into it. And then he starts through the process of his opening, and you can tell that both he and Harvey Steinberg, who represent Rosenblatt, are super aware that all of the sympathy in the world is going to be at one side of that courtroom, and it's not where their clients are. I mean, at the end of the day, it is simply undeniable that Elijah McClain is innocent of any wrongdoing, that whatever contact should have taken place with the law enforcement officers there, dude ain't on the hook for it, and frankly isn't responsible for his own death. That's all going to be true. And now that we've heard that he's a massage therapist, and I'm sure there'll be pictures of him with cats or something like that. I mean, the sympathies all, and I get why, go to him. That makes sense. So they're swimming upstream against that. And they've got to refocus the jury on the idea that you have to shelve the sympathy. So Reed says, listen, this is an undeniable tragedy, what happened to him. It absolutely is. But a tragedy does not make a crime. I agree. That's what Billy and I were talking about yesterday in the 6 o'clock hour. And then he goes on to talk about all the different things that they did that were in compliance with the rules and regs, because the civil attorney from Chicago, his point was that they violated this and they violated that. And when they do the kind of carotid hold, they were supposed to do this and they didn't do that and they didn't do this. All of those things are meant to lead to a conclusion of recklessness. And they need that for manslaughter. They need recklessness for manslaughter. So Reed gets up and is trying to rebut all of those things. And he talks about the different things that they did right and the fact that and then you start to see why each of these defendants wanted their own trial and why they had to be separated. Guess where the fingers are getting pointed? At each other. So you hear from Reed, my guy is now on the hook because paramedic shows up, the guy with all the medical training and all the syringes and all that stuff. That dude says, I'm going to give him ketamine. And my guy goes, okay. And okay now puts him on the hook for it. That was a point that the civil attorney from Chicago made, was that they each agreed when the paramedic said he was going to give him ketamine. And the cops are like, wait, hang on. Agreed? I'm not even in a place to object. What am I going to say? No, you can't do that. I mean, They're like, okay, yeah, sounds good, whatever. They're not the medical professionals. And he emphasizes that. And then he goes into the things that the civil attorney from Chicago avoided in his opening, which were all the discrepancies between the two different doctors. They talk about the findings that the doctors made, that the medical examiners make, the different, I mean, it's important to note that for the defense, this game in many ways is won and lost on the medicine when it comes to the cause of death. Maybe not for the assault charge, which is the go to prison charge, but certainly on the death charges. So Reed finishes up and says, hey, the only outcome that you can give that's justice, words to that effect is, and my client is innocent of these charges, which, by the way, is a higher bar than not guilty. There's a reason to do that, I imagine, tactically. But when you say my client is innocent, that's an important thing for the jury to hear. But it also sets the bar a little bit higher than what the law requires. Nonetheless, then Harvey goes. Now, I've known Harvey Steinberg for as long as I've been a prosecutor, as long as I've been a lawyer. And he is an underestimated trial attorney. And when I say underestimated, he has thrived beating up on prosecutors on lower level cases. He'll show up late. He'll show up sometimes, this is historically, a little bit out of breath. Sometimes the tie is askew. He acts like he's not sure which case he's there on. And then I've watched him in motions hearings just beat prosecutors like baby harp seals because dude's on his game. Dude knows how to ask questions. Guy is a former prosecutor out of the Arapahoe office decades ago, but he's been doing this criminal defense thing forever. It's why he gets retained by the Broncos. It's why he gets retained by the Rocky, by big athletes, is because this guy knows how to win. He's also far more approachable and, in my opinion, accessible by a jury because he just talks to them. Now, the disclaimer I'll give is I've had 3 trials against Harvey. I've gone to trial myself head to head with Harvey 3 times. And yes, every single one of Harvey's clients has gone to prison after that trial. God, I hope someone tells Harvey I'm saying this. He's going to come back and say, well, one of them got overturned and therefore I won. No. The jury agreed with me, my friend. So 3 of his clients have gone to prison as a result of trials we've done. But I will tell you, I respect this guy. This guy knows how to try a case, and he's from here. Right? Like, this dude knows the courtrooms and the juries and the law and all that other stuff here. He doesn't start with, hello, my name is Harvey. He doesn't start like that. But he did start in an interesting way. He started by saying, these are his words, as I sat here listening to the openings, I thought to myself, this jury must feel intimidated. It's a bit overwhelming. The sympathy in this case is tremendous. But the law requires that you remove sympathy from the equation. Now, I wouldn't have started there, but I thought that was pretty effective. I thought that was a pretty good way to start for a guy who doesn't get to be the first voice they hear on any of the evidence, but he's swimming upstream on the sympathy stuff. He starts with that. And then this dude's just wandering around the courtroom talking. The technology fails on him. The slides and the audio and the stuff that he's playing fails on him a couple of times. He makes light of it with himself. He's like, I know that people are going to think I'm going to get upset because I can't make the technology work, but I'm not going to. I think that was an insider reference to all the people that have ever worked with Harvey. But, it's very approachable. He then goes through and reads huge portions out of the medical examiner's reports. And the medical examiner, the initial one that Dave Young hung his hat on when he said, hey, I don't have enough to prosecute here, that guy comes back, and even after considering all the evidence he didn't have before, let's say, or the new stuff, comes back and says, it is still my determination that the officers did not lead to this guy's death, that it was the ketamine. Wow. And he reads it out to the jury. The other thing I noticed about Harvey's opening was it wasn't really an opening. It was closing argument. There was a ton of argument in there. And for folks who are like, what the hell's the difference? An opening statement is supposed to be a presentation, a narrative, if you will, of the evidence that in good faith you expect to be admitted at trial without characterization or spin or all that other stuff. That's argument. So it's not opening arguments, it's opening statements, and it's closing arguments. And closing is where you say, here was this piece of evidence that came in. This is what it means. Do you see what I'm saying? There's arguing And there's characterization and spin on the evidence in closing. In opening, it's supposed to be the narrative, not just a straight recitation, but much less argument. Well, Harvey at one point in there is saying, imagine you're Officer Rosenblatt. You're the junior officer on scene, and your supervising officer. You can never at any stage in the trial ask the jury to put themselves in the shoes of your client or any other witness or victim, because then you're asking them to depart from the fact-finding mission that they're sworn to uphold, to do, and you're asking them to put themselves in an emotional place where they're judging the decisions of this person as if they were them. That you can't do that. That is wrong every time. It's wrong in opening, it's wrong in closing, and nobody objects. And my guess is nobody objects because when I looked at this dude, the lead trial, the guy that gives the opening statement, and you should know when there's three people at a table, one guy gives the opening statement, that's the only guy that can object. If it's a witness and a person questions that witness, they're the only person that can object to the other person. That's it. It's not a team objection thing. This guy sits there and does nothing, doesn't object. And I wonder if it's because, and it says here on his bio I'm looking at, he's tried over 60 jury and bench trials. We don't know what percentage are jury versus bench. That's nothing, folks. 60 ain't nothing. The young prosecutors that are running around the metro area here have 70 plus under their belt after a couple years. And so maybe it's he didn't think it was doing damage. That's a reason to not object. Maybe it's because he just doesn't know, because he's just not in the game. I don't know. We'll see. Nonetheless, Harvey does that. At some point, either there's an objection or the judge sua sponte, that means on his own, jumps in and actually gently admonishes Harvey, hey, this is sounding more like a closing argument. Please get back to just the opening statement piece. But the point is, Harvey is much more narrative and conversational in this, and he spends a ridiculous amount of time, and in a good way, and I don't mean to diminish it, in an appropriate way, highlighting two big factors that you're going to see throughout this trial. Rosenblatt is late to the scene. He's the junior officer. He's a cover officer. He is not a decision maker, period. And then the medicine, and the medical examiner, and the medicine, and the medical examiner part two. These are the two pieces that Harvey has to focus on, I think, for the jury to see Rosenblatt as not guilty of these. Very, very interesting. If I had to pick a defendant for purposes of just the facts that it sounds like are coming out, you'd want to be Rosenblatt. That's my guess. Rodem, a little more experienced, a little bit on scene. But both of them, who are they pointing fingers at? In a not, hey, he's responsible, we're not way, but in a way that feels like that? Woodyard. No wonder Woodyard got pushed off. Both of these guys are going to say, whoa, this was his stop. He made the decision. There was reasonable suspicion. He made the decision to make contact. He was the senior guy, not us. That's the kind of stuff that you're going to hear in this case as well. Very, very interesting. Listen, I don't know if I've beaten this thing to death, but God, I love this stuff because I think it's just very important to understand how the criminal justice system works and what happens. And for me, just the shocking discovery, not revelation, because I guess it's always been out there, the shocking discovery that the lead prosecutor on the case, who represents the people of the state of Colorado, isn't even a people of the state of Colorado. He's a people of the city of Chicago from a civil law firm. Not even a licensed attorney in the state of Colorado. Never, ever, never have I heard of that. Never. It's just, there are questions that need to be asked, like why and how much is it costing us? And don't you trust the people in your office? Are we going to hear they're just so busy? This dude's hiring people all the time. We'll get to the bottom of it somehow. I don't know when. I know that Billy has reached out to Mr. Pacheco. He's the comms guy. And I presume he'll say, we'll answer that question when the Broncos win the Super Bowl or some such nonsense like that. But we're going to try to get to it because it makes sense. Listen, I am happy to take more. There's more text coming in here. I'm happy to take your questions, by the way, about opening statements in general, the criminal case in general, your thoughts, your observations, what you think about this case, 303-696-1971. I'm also happy to tell you about our good friends at QC Kinetics who are out there to solve your pains. For me, the pain right now is how do we get to the truth of what's going on in the AG's office with hiring outside people who don't even do this work on a regular basis to come try our cases. For you, it may be, why do I have pains in my joints? Why do my knees hurt? Or I've just learned to live with it. You don't need to learn to live with it. You can learn to love living without it if you call QC Kinetics. These are the folks that do that regenerative medicine stuff. That's the no pills, No cutting on you, no long downtime, rehab time. This is needlework, folks. A needle in to get you and a needle out to back into you to put it back into you to fix you. You to fix you. That's how it works. You got questions? These folks have answers and all the time in the world to answer them. All you have to do is pick up the phone and call 303-900-8986. 303-900-8986. 303-900-8986. Give them a call. Try to stump them. Ask as many questions as you can. Check out the website, qckinetics.com, and then get it going, man. And then I want to hear from you. Like, I did it, George, and you know what? Pain-free. I've now made the same reckless decision you have to run a marathon. I want to hear that kind of thing. Give us a call and let us know. Stick around. George Brauchler on the George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Let me go through some of the texts here, and then I'll talking to Billy in the off time here reminded me of some of the things I forgot to mention to you. By the way, I did go on the live.coloradojudicial.gov website, live.coloradojudicial.gov website. When you get there, on the right-hand side, there's counties, there's all counties. If you just look at all counties and look at the Adams stuff, you're not going to find Division L. What you have to do is go to the drop-down menu, click on Adams specifically, and then scroll down past the division numbers, past 8, and then you get to E, F, Booyah, L right there. You'll see one of two symbols. One is a green circle with a little triangle in it that you recognize as play. And the other one is a red camera with a line through it that tells you they don't have video streaming. Right now, it says that Division L is not online, which means they haven't started up court yet. I asked Billy, can't we just pipe this thing into the radio once it goes? And we don't know the answer. It's not technology, by the way. It's because the court has a pretty vigorous order out there about expanded media coverage. And I just don't know the answer. And I don't want to sign us up for legal action. You know what? I'm willing to have some people at the station held in contempt by the court, but not me or Billy. And honestly, if you ask me to rank order those, not me first, not Billy second. But anyway, you probably knew that. But there's some things I talked about with Billy. I'll mention to you that Harvey did that I thought was pretty effective too. So let's see here. Harvey Steinberg is going to wipe the floor with this guy. That's from a text. I think Harvey, based on what I've seen, probably the best attorney in the courtroom. That's not enough. It's not enough. It's not even enough that he's the best storyteller in the courtroom and has good facts. That's not enough. In a case like this, the worry has to be, and my guess is much of jury selection was spent on this, is disabusing the jury of a notion that they must take action out of sympathy or otherwise they're cheapening the life of Elijah McClain. Because without anyone ever arguing this, those 12 people at some point are going to go back and look at each other and think, even if they don't say out loud, if I vote not guilty for these guys, am I saying it was okay that this kid died? If they get to that conclusion, these former officers are in real trouble. They have to be able to make a decision outside of that. Here's a text from maybe the Chicago lawyer knows he won't be used in that Democratic city run by the criminals and needs the experience. Because there's so much unprosecuted crime in Chicago, he can't get any experience. But he's a civil dude. He could, I guess he spent some time as an assistant U.S. attorney or something. Here's another question, text. Listening to 7 Hour, is the prosecutor a real-life episode of Suits? That could be, except Harvey, I'm telling you, that Harvey on Suits, legit, right? Like that dude was a local prosecutor in Manhattan for years. And if you believe the nonsense of that Suits show, he never lost a case. Be aware of anybody that's an attorney that's never lost a case. It tells you they don't go on the hard ones. It tells you they fold or do deals on the tough cases. I'm not sure that's the person you want in your corner, but nonetheless, not quite. Here's one. You should Cora this guy's recruitment and pay arrangement. I agree. That's a great one, Texter. I do think we should do that. I think that a Colorado taxpayer should know. And honestly, if this guy's working for free, pro bono, or at some discounted rate because he believes it, I think that's worthy of comment too. I'd love to heap praise on this guy for spending his time not being in Chicago where he practices law to come here and help us try our cases because we're just not good enough to do it ourselves, apparently. But I would like to say, hey, thanks for not costing the taxpayers money. Got an idea in my head, though, that somebody's paying for him to travel out here. Somebody's paying for him to stay in a hotel out here. Maybe it's an Airbnb. And my guess is that somebody is the people of the state of Colorado, of which he ain't one. Here's a couple of the things that I thought of when I was talking with Billy that I forgot to mention about Harvey. One of the things he does is to go and this, in my opinion, starts to approach where he gets into the argument. This part isn't, but it's getting there. And he's talking about the fact that when they get the 911 call, and he plays the portion of the 911 call, they got to do something. In fact, he uses the phrase, now they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. Right? Like they can't not do something. You can't get a 911 call, have the description, find the guy that matches the description, wearing the coat and the mask pre-COVID in August when it's super. You can't just drive by that and be like, everything looks good here. Couldn't do it because they would be crucified if this guy happened to be somebody either leaving the scene of a crime or on his way to another. You can't just ignore it. So I get that. And then he says, you know what else they don't know? In addition to all the massage stuff, he says they don't know that he's got headphones in listening to music. So when they make this connection, they see him, he matches the 911 call, and they're asking him, hey, sir, stop. Hey, stop, please stop, multiple times. He's ignoring them. That is suspicious. That's bizarre behavior. And then he says they go up to him, and far from trying to hurt him, they're just trying to talk to him. But then he begins to say things that are odd in addition to all these other observations. And so he plays the body cam video of it. And he says out loud the words that are spoken. And this is odd, right? Like when the police go hands-on with him, he says, I am going to take my power back. I intend to take my power back. That's weird, folks. I mean, that's just weird. I mean, I don't know anybody in my life where I have ever said, do this, do that, touch, and I'm going to take my power back. It's an odd comment. It's not a criminal comment. It doesn't lead me to conclude he was engaged in crime, but it's the kind of thing where you'd be like, what's going on here, right? Like your mind is racing. And so then he says multiple times, I intend, I intend, I intend, I intend. It's just odd, and it fuels the rest of these observations. And again, in no way does this justify how they went kinetic, but Harvey is laying this out. I intend to take my power back. I intend, I intend, I intend. Weird. And something else that Elka said was, he's like, listen, these guys then tell him, we are going to take you down over here. They don't throw him to the ground where he is because it's asphalt and rocks. And Elkis's point is, if they wanted to hurt him, that's where they'd go. They're not trying to hurt this guy. They're trying to not hurt this guy. So they walk him over to the grassy area or take him over to the grassy area before they take him to the ground. I didn't think of that. I'm like, okay, well, that's something. If this was all emotion and we're just going to get you, sucker, why don't they just drop him where he stands? Interesting points to be made. Does not at all justify what happened later. I'm just saying these are the things that come up in the openings that are an attempt to address. And in fact, I can't even say address because the civil lawyer from Chicago didn't even really lay out all this stuff in that way, but an attempt to address the prosecution's case and some of the rougher facts. And these are things I just hadn't considered. And so at the end of the day here, I think a great point of emphasis for the defense is going to be all of these things that make this guy sympathetic. Have they known all of those things as they rolled up? Yep, probably a completely different context, but they don't know any of them. They don't know any of this stuff. In their limited universe, when they come across a 911 call, dude matches it, dressed like this. And by the way, something else Harvey emphasized, this part of Aurora has the highest crime rate of any part of Aurora. In fact, what he says in his opening is this area of Aurora has such high crime, Aurora police officers are not allowed to do anything by themselves. They must wait for a cover car. Can you imagine? That's a hell of a fact. Doesn't make everything that took place afterwards okay, but that's what's going on in the minds of these dudes as they roll up and start this engagement. It's just very interesting where this case is going to go. I'm anxious to see the rest. I keep sitting here trying to refresh the page to see if they've gone live on the courts. They haven't. But we will continue to talk about this thing. I don't mean to bore the hell out of you. If you don't like this, you text in and say, hey, I don't care about the court stuff. It's not going to change the thing that I do, but I would like to know. It may be for the future, but this is just fascinating stuff to me. Something else that you ought to know. But as long as we're talking about law, here's something. There's an attorney out there, a guy named Dan Kaplis. I talk about him all the time. I've seen Dan do stuff with the law. In fact, I used to work for Dan way back when his partner Bobber, I think, was a brand new attorney. Bobber and I tried his very first case together in front of Judge Wheeler out there in Arapahoe. And yes, we won. But Dan would never try a case like this. Dan ain't Harvey either, but Dan is not the guy that stands up and says, hello, my name is Dan Kaplis and I represent not an opening statement. That takes place in the early parts of jury selection, but not an opening. I kind of wish I wasn't just doing a live read for Dan. I kind of wish I could have a conversation with Dan after he watched the opening, if he had a chance to just sort of compare notes. What did you see that you liked? What did you see that you didn't? Because this dude has been at the top of the trial game for decades now in Colorado on behalf of victims. So if you know anybody, maybe it's you, that's been hurt by somebody's negligence or recklessness, and you want somebody who's not going to introduce themselves to the jury in opening statement, but instead is going to bring the fastball from the very first pitch as they take on the big bad insurance companies and businesses trying to keep you from getting justice, it's Dan Kaplis. It's Babar Wahid. I just know these guys. This is not how they would try a civil case, let alone a criminal case. You got to give them a call, 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551. Or you can check them out at dankaplislaw.com. That's C-A-P-L-I-S, dankaplislaw.com. When we come back, more of your texts. If you got calls, by the way, this is the segment to do it. 303-696-1971. It's George Brauchler on The George Show. Objection overruled. 710 KNUS. Little Pearl Jam right here on 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here for this final segment of this hour. We'll change it up when we get to the 9. Let me read you some of the texts that have come in here. Very compelling. Thank you. I appreciate hearing that. I really do. Another one. Libs have been trying to dissolve the states and expand a large federal system. Bringing in a Chicago civil lawyer is a step in this direction. Example, law in California should be the law of the land. I said, interesting take. That is interesting because I do think there is a push, and I would have said exclusively by the people left of center, to federalize as many things as possible. But, you know, we're having this, if I could just step aside from this particular issue, we're having the same issue with the abortion stuff, right? Like here we were fighting for decades over states' rights on this issue, that this is a state issue. And now you have this litmus test-like question showing up with the guys running and gals running for president, like, do you support a federal law that would outlaw abortion? Even Trump, remember Trump got asked about that. Dude's answer should have been, no, I don't support any federal law on abortion. Ever, never, never, ever. I support the states making this decision. That's what we fought for 5. That's not what he fought for, but that's what we fought for 5 decades. And it's here. Let's let the states do their work. But instead, there's this thing. So I do agree with you, Texter, that there is a move. I would have said libs only, but it's not just libs, to federalize as much of America as possible and move away from the significance and the importance and the sovereignty of states. That is for sure. Here's another one. The trial stuff is fascinating. Keep it up. Thank you. That's nice, Texter. Thank you very much for that. Awesome stuff. I would love to have you do more of this. I could watch court TV all day. Same. I could too. I love sitting there and watching the trial work. I can't imagine why court TV isn't on 24 hours a day in here in the studio with me, but I couldn't hear it, and that's a problem. Here's a prosecutor, a text. Pretty amateur to hear the intro and opening. By that time, the jurors have likely already heard the judge refer to counsel by name more than enough to know it. Yes, that's true. 100% true. Also, more professional to just pause, make eye contact, come across as sincere, and dive right into the fact. 100%. This dude dudette could be teaching class with me. Worked when I was a prosecutor. That's absolutely right. Now, listen, we've run up on the end of this thing. I can't tell you I'm going to spend 2 hours every show going over the evidence in the case. That's probably going to be too much. I'm going to try to watch as much of this as possible. The problem I run into is, because I'm on the radio and I actually have 8 billion other jobs after the radio, if I can't listen to it in the car, like live stream it in the car while we're going, I miss out. So I'm hopeful that one of the news media outlets out there can at least use me as a legal analyst so that I have a justification for reviewing the stuff that I didn't see and I can provide them commentary. I don't know if it's KDVR or one of the other stations, but I'd love to be able to see that. And I want you to see it too. If you can't live stream it, I want you to be able to see it recorded after the fact, regardless of the outcome. If these guys are found guilty, great. But I do think the public needs to be in a position to hold the system accountable for its successes and its failures. You know, Billy asked, like, hey, at the end of this, what do you think? Is this going to be a campaign issue for Phil? Only if they lose. If they lose, then people are going to be like, what the hell did you spend money on? Why did you bring an outside guy? But if they win, nobody's going to care. Nobody will ever care that he went and hired some non-prosecutor civil partner out of Chicago to come try a case that should have been tried by Coloradans. It's just interesting that he stands up and says, Chris Bunge, for the people of the state of Colorado. I'm not one, but, you know, for you, I'm here for you. This is very, very interesting. Well, we'll see what happens when they get back into the courtroom. Listen, when we come back, I want to talk to you about something. It does touch upon courts, and churches, and schools, and maybe even the floor of the Senate or the House. Stick around. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler with you here for the final hour of the George Show on 710 KNUS. We are, for the moment, leaving the trial up there in the 17th Judicial District. That's the people of the state of Colorado and a civil Chicago attorney versus former officers Rodema and Rosenblatt. That thing's going to go on again. It just hasn't started yet, and we'll get to it in the future. I wanted to change gears, though, and talk about something, though, that touches on the courtroom. And it begins with a discussion of what I'm wearing. I know, that's awkward. Let me give you a little bit more detail here. I am sitting here. If you're not listening, if you're not watching like on the Rumble or the YouTube, and I'm looking at the camera right now, some of you are, because some of you texted and you're wearing a Camp Lejeune t-shirt. I am wearing a Camp Lejeune because these guys had me come out. The Marine Corps prosecutors had me come out and do a training for them some years ago. And they gave me this t-shirt because on the back, and I'm just going to spin around for the video people, there is a logo that is remarkably identical to the one that I had for our office called Seek the Truth, Punish the Wicked. And it's because I had taught a dude who was in charge of their trial counsel assistance program. He'd seen the logo, said, can I adopt this and use this for the Marines? And I said, I don't really think I own it. So yeah, go ahead and do it. I don't know if I can copyright something that I took and bastardized to fit my own purposes, but go ahead. So they gave me this t-shirt I wear. But I'm sitting here, and much to the chagrin of Mark Crowley, who would like me to wear a tuxedo every day to the radio. I'm wearing a t-shirt, sweats, and no socks, but some UGG slippers that I got as a gift. That's it. My level of personal hygiene, and folks, do not be offended. It's not a reflection of how much I respect or love you, because I do both those things. Buckets full. The personal hygiene that takes place in the 4 o'clock hour involves brushing my teeth and leaving the bathroom. That's it. There is no other effort there, Billy. I don't know if you do anything different, Billy. If you're like, no, I like to get the full delousing in. I do the shower. I shave everything.
Well, I got to get the mites off you. That's the issue.
You might not.
Thing. Yeah,
using my technique.
Nice job there. For me, I do. Strangely enough, I start with the shower in the morning.
God bless you, buddy. I'm so impressed because I can't do it.
Yeah. It's a very quick shower, and then I always look at myself and go, well, might as well shave this stupid face. So do that, and then do the brushing, and then downstairs. I carve out a lot of time.
I'm so sorry. Did you finish with downstairs?
No, not there. Well, I brush there too, but that's only because I got to make sure that
this is 6 o'clock talk. But go on.
Beads and the
Lord,
designing down. No,
anyway,
sorry. No, then there are some other little things I do to set up the family in the morning and make sure that the coffee is ready to go for my wife. I will empty the dishwasher. I will load the dishwasher.
You get up at midnight?
No, it's just one of those things that it's this running a family. It's like a team sport. And so there's a lot of people, some of which...
A lot of people are injured reserve.
Yeah,
because there are a lot of folks out there who can't seem to take the field.
No, not at all. A lot of them seem to think they're the substitutes.
That's right.
And
I'm second team.
Yes,
I'm second team, Dad.
Yeah, so that part of it. So I can't... I feel greasy and weird if I don't shower in the morning. So...
I used to care about that, and I still do in this way. Sometimes
and you get into radio.
Sometimes that's right. Sometimes when I leave the station, I've got to go to a meeting, and sometimes they're in debt. If I'm doing anything in person, then yes, I will go through the Billy-like efforts, at least in terms of the hygiene. But coming into the radio is it's hard to make eye contact with Mark as he walks by, because I'm sure he's very, very disappointed in what we've talked about here.
Gives that tisk look.
But when you go to court, it's different.
Yeah.
Right? Like, as I'm an attorney, if I'm going to court, man, I'm in a suit. I'm in a suit and a tie. I try to find one of the suits that still fits since I took over this radio show. Mark's walking into the studio. He's bringing.
He's got the spray.
He's bringing in the Febreze.
Oh, that's great.
You can see it on the video.
Oh, that's wonderful.
What a lovely scent. Is that spam? What is that?
I think it's summer rain.
It is summer rain. You know
refreshing.
What? This makes it even less likely I'll shower in the future.
Exactly.
Thank you, Mark. But when you go to court, there's just an expectation. I don't even know if there's a rule. I don't even know if there's some rule out there that says men must be wearing suits and ties and blah, 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 and women must be.
It's weird because
I don't know.
My experience of court is just being referred to as the defendant. So I have a different experience inside the courtroom.
Funny thing to bring up because the dress code for the rest of court seems far more ad hoc.
Yeah.
And I mean, just really dependent upon who your judge is. The reason I started talking about this and thinking about this is, and many of you are probably like, I think I know where he's going, is that recently the United States Senate, under the quote unquote leadership of Chuck Schumer out of New York, the Senate Majority Leader, was to change the dress code, informal dress code, that's how it's been described, rules for taking the Senate floor and doing a whole bunch of other things. There is a TV station out of Pennsylvania, and this matters because this touches upon directly, and it was probably caused by directly one of their senators, and Billy was going to fire that up.
Signature shorts and hoodie on the U.S. Senate floor, thanks to a change in Senate policy.
Yeah, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer quietly made that change, telling the Sergeant of Arms to no longer enforce the dress code.
And we have reaction to that change now from political editor John Delano.
Leave it to Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman, well known for greeting presidents in shorts and hoodies, to help guide the United States Senate into a new era of sartorial splendor, or maybe not. In a statement to CBS News, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said that senators are able to choose what they wear on the Senate floor, adding that he will continue to wear a suit.
I think that this most recent move by Senator Schumer is clearly designed to, accommodate one senator, or Pennsylvania's own Senator John Fetterman.
Neither Schumer nor Fetterman has yet confirmed that this is the reason for the rules change. But David Urban, who was the chief of staff to the late Senator Arlen Specter, calls the change sad, saying Fetterman has worn a coat and tie on the Senate floor and in committee hearings and should continue to do the same.
It is serious work that they're doing in the Senate. You're not gardening, you're running the nation.
Of course, dress standards have changed everywhere, from the office worker to the television reporter out in the field. And another former Senate staffer, Doug Saltzman, is not surprised.
I don't know if it's exactly directed at him. There's been changes over the years. I mean, I remember instituting a rule in our office that you could come in casual on a Friday. Casual Fridays were a big thing. I always thought it was a big step years ago when the Duquesne Club in Pittsburgh, the Tony Business Club, you could be casual on the first floor during the lunch hour.
But Keith Schmidt, state director for former Senator Rick Santorum, says the U.S. Senate should maintain the highest standards.
In an age when I know that's a slippery slope and there's a lot of changes going on, two of the places where you still see a sense of decorum is in the court and at church. But, if these gentlemen and ladies are actually approving judges, they should at least live by that standard.
I reached out to both Senators Casey and Fetterman on the policy change. No official response yet, although no surprise, Fetterman is responding on social media to some criticism from Republican politicians like Ron DeSantis and Marjorie Taylor Greene. No word yet on whether he'll wear his hoodie onto the Senate floor. John Delano, KDKA TV News.
That dude has the best voice. The only thing missing is the globe spinning with the kind of plane going around with like news from around the world. And that's called a home run in anyone's book. I mean, it just has that feeling to it. Nonetheless, Senator Fetterman, if he's not the reason for this, what a huge coinky dink, right? Like all of a sudden, the dude who doesn't seem to fit anything other than tent size sweatshirts and giant cutoff shorts, sweatpants. But here's the bigger question. Who's right? Like, who's right? I mean, what should we be expecting from senators and ultimately members of the House of Representatives? I mean, do you expect them to be in suits? If so, why? Is it a sense of tradition, formality? And where else does this go? I mean, I can tell you where I've seen the clothing change, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. 303-696-1971. And we've talked about dress codes, Billy and I, a bunch of times. Yesterday, we were just talking about the fact that I think every single grade school should have some kind of a dress code. Our kids did when they were out at that awesome Platte River Charter School in Highlands Ranch. Just having the khaki shorts or pants and the polo shirts, except for spirit days and all that, I just think it's great. Makes it easier on parents, but it also de-emphasizes the clothing as what's important in a school setting. It's a different reason for doing it in a court setting, a Congress setting, or what about church? Haven't you noticed a complete I've been the beneficiary of it. I can't tell you how many times I've been at a sports event or something like that with Graham, and we're like, hey, I've got an extra however much amount of time, but not enough to go home and change. Let's just drive to the church and go. And I've been in sweats and a t-shirt. I see people that are still there dressed in slacks and a button-up shirt and all that. And it does make me feel a little uncomfortable to be underdressed, but nobody says anything. I mean, it's a far cry from the days when everybody got gussied up on Sundays, rolled in there. Where do you think we got that term, Sunday finest, rolled into church and did that? When it comes to the courtroom setting, is this the next step? I mean, could I have a policy for a district attorney's office where I'm like, hey, listen, as long as you're dressed, I don't care what you wear when you're out there dealing with the court. We can talk differently in front of a jury. I think jurors have expectations of suits and stuff, but when you're going to court, is there anything that says you can't show up in jeans and Colorado themed shoes like I have? And maybe a t-shirt, maybe you throw a jacket on, maybe you don't. I mean, is there some rule that dictates that? And is that the expectation? I mean, is that what you think out there? If you're driving around right now and you're like, I think we're more poorly dressed than ever, and this, I tried to put myself in the position of the people that would support Fetterman. And that is, maybe we're just past that point now. Maybe what you wear doesn't matter. Maybe at some point in the not too distant future, you're going to turn on CNN and it's going to look a lot like a summer camp. You know what I mean? People running around, the sunglasses on the head, Marjorie Taylor Greene in some sort of wacky patriotic themed swimsuit. Maybe there's a skirt on with it. And I don't know. Because remember that jacket, that Cruella de Vil jacket that she had at the one thing? I wasn't thinking Cruella de Vil, by the way. You know what I was thinking of is that animated rendition of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe with the Queen of. That's who I was thinking of. With the, would you like some Turkish delights? That's who I was picturing when I saw that jacket. Nonetheless, does it matter anymore? Do you care? Do you care what folks wear to the floor of the Senate or the House of Representatives? I mean, other than the press conferences they give, do you ever watch them do stuff? Other than the little, does it matter to you? Does it cheapen the work that they do? And what do you do at work? What do you wear at work? I remember back in the day, I was a young prosecutor assigned to, I think it was Division I out there in the 1st Judicial District, Jeffco. This was right before I got attached to the Columbine case with Steve Jensen, super prosecutor, retired now, super prosecutor. And we were in front of Henry Nieto, who at the time was a district court judge. He'd had in some circles the name Hammer and Hank because of some of his sentences. I always found him to be a completely empathetic, really good judge. He ended up going to the Court of Appeals under Governor Owens and then has since retired. I don't know where he's at now, but a great judge to be in front of and try a case. But he had this technique that I picked up on pretty early that I thought was so effective. If I was ever going to be a judge, if any governor was foolish enough to appoint me to be a judge, I would adopt this. And so when we had docket days, you're not in trial every day. You have days where you're just working cases. There are plea bargains, there's sentencing, there's stuff like that. On those days, courtroom would be packed with people. And he will have prepared, which is something a lot of judges don't do as much as they should anymore. But he would have gone through the cases. He'll see what he's inclined to do, where he's going to go. And if he had a case where a couple things he would do, two things. One is he would have his clerk look out in the courtroom and find the person who was just poorly dressed for court. I mean, like no collared shirt, no nothing. And he would get them to find out what the case is. He would call that case up first. Call the case. The attorney shows up, the guy shows up, and it's always a guy. And before he went anywhere, he'd say, please enter your appearance. Hey, it's Joey Jojo Jr. Shabadoo, and this is my client, Mr. Smith. And then before he could say anything, we're here today and the judge would say, stop, counsel. Let me just ask, did your client believe that he was coming to a picnic today? And the attorney would be like, I'm sorry, Your Honor, I don't understand. Look at the way your client is dressed. He's in a court of law. Did you think you were coming to a picnic, sir? And that, everybody's eyes would dilate. There'd be a little bit of pee-pee at the podium. And then he'd say, here's what I'm going to do. I am going to put your case at the bottom of the pile, which is death for private counsel, right? Because they want to get in, get out, go to the next courthouse, keep working cases, making money. I'm going to put your file at the bottom of the pile of all these cases, and I'm going to give you time to go and find a collared shirt. And when you are dressed appropriately for this courtroom, you can come back and we'll take up your case. If you're not appropriately dressed and back in front of me within this period of time, I will consider holding you in contempt of court. And the whole room would be like, you would see 3 or 4 other poorly dressed people and their attorneys pop up and run out into the hallway and get on whatever cell phones they had and say, hey, I need you to bring me a shirt, or I need you to find me blah, blah, blah. That kind of story doesn't have to happen every week. It just has to happen once every so often, because then defense counsel are out there, and when they're meeting with their clients and saying, hey, we have a plea coming up next week, wear a collared shirt, dude. If you don't wear the collared shirt, it gets ugly for me and for you. Don't make it ugly for me and for you. And I always thought, I really appreciate that. One other technique that he used, by the way, was if he knew he was sending someone to jail or prison, he never went long-winded with them. If it was going to be jail or prison, that did the talking for him. So if you're a prosecutor and you are arguing for a sentence of incarceration with someone, if he went off on them, and if he wasn't going to give them jail or prison, he was going to give them a second chance, he would talk to them in a way that would scare the bejesus out of them. Like, you'd be like, oh my God. And that was his way of saying, this is it. This is it. This is your last chance. And you come back before me and you go. But he always started those docket days with the dress guy. And then the next guy would be the guy going to prison or jail. He'd get up, you'd make your argument, defense would make their argument, and then he would say a couple things and say, I'm sentencing you to 3 years in the Department of Corrections. Please have a seat until the day. And the whole room, you'd get there, they'd be like, oh my God, this is real. And they'd watch him go through the side door. And those 2 things kept that courtroom running, not only like a well-oiled machine, but very respectful. The decorum was great. And I've been in other courtrooms where it's not, where the judge wants to be too friendly and wants to be loved by people. And maybe they're concerned about public perception because they have to be retained in 6 months or a year or 2 years or whatever. I don't know what it is. But when you lower your standards, people will fall to those standards. I promise you. You raise your standards. I'm talking about court now. You raise your standards, people will rise to those standards. I was in front of now Justice Carlos Samor. We did that big Aurora trial. Dude had a high standard for everybody. He applied the stick evenly. I've told the story about how I felt that stick, but it made a huge difference in getting that case done. That's what a dress code does in that circumstance. You could not, in my opinion, achieve that same outcome in a courtroom if the attorneys are in shorts and t-shirts or in sweatpants. You couldn't do it. That's my opinion, but I could be wrong. 303-696-1971. I want to get Jack from Wyoming on this. Jack, do me a favor, hang on, because I don't want to take you for a minute, Jack. I want to take you for more than a minute. And everybody else that's starting to call in here to have this conversation, I do not want to short you, but I do need to do this. I got to talk about Mitch Floria. We'll cut away. I'll come back, Jack. I promise we'll get you. And everybody else. And the text, too. There's text in here as well. And we've got another clip to play of Senator Fetterman. If you are thinking of finishing your basement, and this isn't even part of the live read stuff. They usually have me just talk about the kitchen and the master bathroom. I'm talking about finishing the basement. And I'm down there in the basement thinking about what would I do if I had the money? If I put in a seating area, do I do a wet bar or something, or even just a bar, even if it's not wet, other than the spilled drinks, I'm sure, that will accompany it. What do I do with that? If you're thinking anything to do with counters, whether it's building new, renovation, whatever you're going to do, you got to call Mitch Floria at the Art of Granite. Don't be deceived by the website name. It's the Art of Granite, but it's far more than that. It should be like the Art of Granite and marble and quartz and anything else you can dream of. But I imagine that's way too many characters to type into your search bar. Theartofgranite.com as to where to go. Not good enough, though. If you're serious about this, and I hope you're serious, you're going to get in the car, you're going to drive out there to about 6th Avenue and Colfax. It's a big investment, right? It's a smart investment. You go out there, you see what he has to offer, and then beware. You meet him, you shake his hand, you look in his eye, you listen to the guarantees he makes to you that'll put in writing, and you think, oh my God, I'm doing this. I'm really going to do this. And you're going to be so happy that you did. Here's the kicker. Not only does he extend the wholesale prices to you that he gets, if you tell him you're a 710 listener, a George listener, he will also throw in the bathroom countertop for free with the kitchen countertop package. But if you're only doing one room, and I picture the basement, you're finishing the basement, he'll throw the sink in for free with whatever that countertop package is. Give Mitch a try. I'm telling you, this is a guy that you don't trust him just because of the things he puts in writing or the things he says, but it's those little things that you can't really, I don't know how else to capture it. Like the number I'm about to give you is his cell phone. Who does that? Who does that in this day and age? No filter. 303-386-5919. 303-386-5919. That's Mitch Flory at the Art of Gun. We're going to come back from a break. We're going to get Jack. Others, I'll read these texts as well. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com.
Leave it to Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman, well known for greeting presidents in shorts and hoodies, to help guide the United States Senate into a new era of sartorial splendor, or maybe not. In a statement to CBS News, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said that senators are able to choose what they wear on the Senate floor, adding that he will continue to wear a suit.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS, talking into a dead mic. And frankly, some of you are probably thankful. Listen, we're talking about the dress code thing that's going on with, it's driven by Senator Fetterman. And now we're going to allow some big dude. And I still think this is tied into something his doctor must have provided to leadership in the Senate. And that is, he had that bout of clinical depression, no laughing matter. And my guess is some of it is tied to, when he wears suits, it's just so contrary to who he is that it enhances his depression or something. I don't know. And frankly, I don't know that we should care, but I wonder what the reason for this is. But is it a good thing? I mean, what do you think about all this stuff? Let's just go right up north here to Jack. Jack, you're on 710 KNUS. What do you think?
Well, what I called in, I think it was Billy answered, but you wouldn't go to a funeral with sweatpants and sleeveless T-shirt on. I mean, you wouldn't do it. But when you're talking about the courts, there's a much, much bigger and deeper reason to show respect and to dress respectfully. And what people aren't taught in school, and nobody is taught, and these kids don't understand, the cornerstone, what maintains civility, which we all enjoy, is the court system. Without a court system, you wouldn't have contracts. You couldn't enforce them. You couldn't get a car loan. The entire society would crumble without the legal system. So to be disrespectful to a legal system that everybody in that courtroom is benefiting from is ludicrous. And no, it's not ludicrous. It's just a lack of our education system. And if you look at it really closely, what are the Democrats trying to do? They're trying to destroy every area of law. Think about it.
Do you take that same approach, though, to the floor of the Senate where this thing has happened? I mean, maybe we just are going to have different standards because maybe we should de-emphasize how sweet and important the Congress is because it's just a place where you and I get to go be elected. Should we do that?
No, it's more serious than that. And they shouldn't be allowed to dress like slobs.
What do you do with church if you go? I'm not judging you one way or the other.
Well, when I went to church, 50 years ago, we used to put a shirt and a tie on. We went every Sunday, but I've gotten away from that. But yes, we dressed up for church.
You did? Okay, now that's impressive because I haven't done that in a while. I try to wear a collared shirt, polo or otherwise, but I have done a bunch of jeans and stuff. Maybe the only time I would pick it up a notch is Easter and Christmas, kind of enhancing that C&E Catholic thing, but Christmas or Easter because everybody's a little more dressy. But I've seen a ton of people show up like they were in the middle of a barbecue and slam their beer down. They're like, come on, we got to go to church, that kind of thing. I just wonder, do you feel like it shows a level of disrespect or is this more like, what would Jesus have expected, right? Was Jesus like, you're not dressed appropriately for me?
Yeah, well, I'm not even going to get into the Jesus discussion, but I mean, it's a lack of respect. But if you don't have respect for the court system and you're enjoying all of your freedoms as a result of it, then you're not very smart.
That's interesting. Frank, I appreciate, or Jack, I'm sorry, I appreciate the conversation on this. And I agree with you as to the funeral for sure. Like I've shown up to a lot of funerals lately in uniform for some important reasons, but it's hard to imagine showing up to a funeral in shorts and a sweatshirt. And is the conduct of the Senate or the House of Representatives deserving of less respect than that? I mean, in some ways, the Senate is presiding over the death of freedom. No, I'm kidding. I don't know, but it does feel interesting to me. We don't care anymore about schools. I mentioned this the other day with the dress code stuff that we started to talk about. I see these girls rolling out of Graham's middle school. It could be called midriff middle school. It feels like Graham did tell me there were a couple girls walking around with these Rocky Heights shirts. If they're caught wearing inappropriate clothes, they have to wear the Spirit shirts or whatever until they go home and get new ones. But I'm telling you, at some of these social events after school, and by social, I mean the sports and all that stuff, I see some of these girls walking around. I'm like, oh, dear God, man. Like, don't you worry that when your daughter leaves your house like that, guys are not looking at them saying, you know what? She looks like a great conversationalist. I'm going to go have a time. It's not like that. but I don't know if it's a lack of respect or not. 303-696-1971 is our number. We do have Senator John Fetterman's response to this issue right here. He's talking with Chris Hayes of MSNBC.
Great to be here.
Let me start with the most important matter facing our country at this dire moment, which is the matter of the Senate dress code, which has recently been changed.
Of course, yes, yeah, no, of course. I've heard that some people are upset about that, and the right have been like losing their mind. They're just like, oh my God, dogs and cats are living together, and like I said, aren't there more important things we should be talking about rather than if I dress like a slob?
Yes, Marjorie Taylor Greene said that Senate no longer enforcing a dress code for senators is to appease Fetterman is disgraceful. Dress code is one of society's standards that set etiquette and respect for institutions. Stop lowering the bar. What do you say to that?
Well, her platform, really, she runs on more and more ding-a-ling, picks, on in the meetings over in Congress. So again, I'm not really sure why she cares how I dress, but she really takes it a different way.
Not even sure what that means. She takes it a different way. I think it's a slam. But a couple observations about that. One, is that not the most coherent you have heard John Fetterman in the last 2 years? I mean, those were actual sentences with subjects and nouns and verbs and objects, and they were all strung together. I mean, that's impressive. That tells me this guy's either on the mend or there are just some topics he's really, really much stronger at than, let's say, Senate stuff. The other thing that I observed was his concession that he dresses like a slob. People shouldn't be worried that I dress like a slob. I just don't know how to take this. I'm not sure. It feels like I wish this was a Republican that had done this, because I'd feel a little bit more comfortable saying it so it didn't seem like, oh, this is just Republicans, like he said, jumping on top of the Dems. I don't want it to seem like that. Maybe I wish it was Republicans and Dems who had done this, just because I don't think it's a partisan thing, and maybe you can convince me otherwise. But is this just a further deterioration of the respect that we should demand of our institutions? Right now, we have no respect for our institutions. I mean, the trust that people have in government is at its lowest level that I can think of, at least based on the polling that Billy showed me. The trust that we have in our institutions is de minimis. Congress is below, by the way, I think used car salesmen and stuff really, really low on the list. Does this help? Does this enhance that? Part of me wondered too, if Chuck Schumer wasn't trying to reach out to that next generation. Like, hey, kids, you don't have to worry about going and matching up the tigers on your Garanimal suit. You can wear anything you want when you roll out on the floor here at age 35. I don't know. 303-696-1971. Nick from Denver. What are your thoughts, Nick? Hello, Nick. No, Nick. Nick, I think Nick's here. We've got the dress code thing on there. Nick. I'm going to put you on hold, Nick. When they release you from custody and they give you your phone back, come on back and jump on here. Here's some more texts. Fetterman exercising his white trash privilege, murdered a 23-year-old immigrant by 14 carjackers. As usual, no outrage by the whites at the numbers. Post, westward, and Republicans refuse to weaponize it. That's a great reference, Fran. There is a case out there of this Iraqi immigrant who came here from Iraq with his family, and 4 carjackers. I think they're still on the lookout for him. Fran, if they found him, let me know. Shoot me a link. But 4 carjackers, which, as you know, car theft is all about finding a place to stay warm and to do your drugs or murder people. And that's what these guys did. The fact that they're teens, very interesting to see what the law will permit for these cold-blooded murderers. This is a classic liberal narcissism. It's all about him, and you have no right to criticize. Very interesting. Another text. Also, there is a reason why They had their old-timey read from CBS News. These things are not coincidence. It is meant to play into the cultural narrative that only old white Republicans care about what someone wears. That's an interesting take. Wasn't this a Pennsylvania guy, though, Billy? This wasn't some national guy that MSNBC found. But it's an interesting take that they wanted it to sound like it was, and in further news. Oh, he's also, and Billy says he's also the station's political commentator. So it sounds like that might be coincidence, but I like where your head's going there. We've got to find the conspiracy. I'm joking. Another text. I think it shows respect or lack thereof to not dress up a bit for cases being courtroom. As far as church, I grew up hearing Sunday best. Yes, me too. Somehow we've gotten way too casual. Seems less respectful to me, but I'm old-fashioned. God bless. You know, Artist, that's a great point too. Isn't this also a recognition of the deterioration of our respect for each other? Like, you're not dressing up for you, right? You're dressing up for the environment you're in and the people around you. What this is saying is I've stopped caring about those two things. All I care about is my comfort and my ease. And admittedly, when I roll out of bed and get in the car and drive to the station, I'm not thinking about Billy or Mark. That is, or Tom. That is the truth. That's a great point, Artist. Maybe this is just a reflection of how little we care about each other as much as anything else. 303-696-1971. Jamie, you're on 710. What do you think?
Oh, hi, George. Thank you. Well, I think it's sad to see when you go downtown or when you go somewhere, everybody looks like they're homeless. I don't know if you noticed that, but they're just so poorly
They
dressed.
could be, by the way, looking at the numbers.
Well, could be, yes, but even so, it's as if people lost their self-respect. And I remember looking at old high school photos of my late father. He graduated in 1932, and all the kids there were dressed so beautifully and their hair done, and they really cared about themselves and how they looked, and appeared to each other. But as we all lost our self-respect and our belief in ourselves and each other in this country, to me, that's very sad.
Do you apply that same standard across the board? Like, it might be appropriate to distinguish church, say, from court, say, from Congress, say, from anywhere else, or do you apply this across the board? I think we need to be having the higher standards for that reason in every one of those settings. Or are there somewhere you're like, Jesus wouldn't care if I was wearing a suit? You know what I mean?
Well, I understand what you're saying, but is church important to you? Let me ask you something. Yeah. When you were dating as a young man and you found the woman you wanted to marry and you went out on the first date, did you go out, unwashed, wearing a dirty T-shirt and dirty jeans, or did you spiff yourself up?
No, I'm kidding. No. Of course you cleaned yourself up. Yeah, of course.
Because this person was important to you.
Well, yeah, and you didn't want them to know the true you. you didn't want them to know what they were about to sign up for, which is that last week's dinner on your shirt, and you're like, it tastes like mustard, or something like that.
Right. But still, it's with the Senate one, dressing in sweatshirts and everything, it seems to indicate what they're doing is not important to them.
Yeah, that's interesting. I can see where you're going, and I tend to agree. I mean, in the things that matter, but are we going to see that change over time too?
No.
Where we're going to start to say we just don't put emphasis on what you wear anymore. Is it classist to do that?
Yeah, that's a good question too. I mean, I remember way back when people really cared about style and how they looked. There was that element that played into it.
I bet you we will see this in the state legislature this year, because remember the Dems in Denver just appointed that guy, Tim Hernandez, that bomb throwing, I don't know if he's socialist or communist guy, the guy that took the oath with the raised fist. I'll bet you that guy goes to the leadership and says, I just want to show up in a Screw Whitey t-shirt or something like that. And they're going to be like, that makes sense. Let's do it. I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
You made some great points, Jamie. Thank you so much for the phone call. Good conversation. Listen, Ron, Robert, I'm going to get you on after the break here. Very quickly, Step Denver, as important a thing as you're going to do, they don't care how you dress, by the way. What Step Denver cares about, and they've been in the business of saving lives for decades, they do it one life at a time. They provide a safe, structured, sober environment for men to get off the streets and off of their addiction, not for a week, month, or year, but forever. They do it without taxpayer dollars. If you've never toured this place, but I have multiple times, we do a show out there, a remote show every year from there. All they ask is for your support in doing what they're doing. They ask you to help them save lives. And there's really not anything else you can do with your money or certainly your car that you can say, I think I'm saving a life here. These guys take trucks, cars, trucks, RVs, all that other stuff, whatever it is that you have that you're driving around and you're getting ready to put this thing out to pasture, rather than sell it and take a couple $100, why not give it to them? Let them clean it up, maximize the value. That helps you too with the tax write-off thing. But it also allows them to provide funding for a man to go into this program. It's a multi-year program. Each car allows them to do that. Be part of that process. Save a life today. I'm telling you, I'm going to do it. I just got to find that ridiculous title. Please don't make me go back through the DMV to try to get a new title. That headache is something I don't want to go through. Nonetheless, give them a call. Hassle-free tow 303-296-9020, 303-296-9020, or check them out at stepdenver.org. That's stepdenver.org. When we come back, our calls are text George Brauchler 710 KNUS. Special music right here on 710 KNUS. Billy reminded me that, to inform me, not really reminded me, that today is Earth, Wind, and Fire Day because it's September 21, baby. I'm going to listen to this on the way home. In between the trial there, it's back on, by the way. If you go to that website that we read to you, that live.coloradojudicial.gov, you can navigate your way to Courtroom L in Adams County and listen to the question. It looks like the first witness they're calling is a foundational witness for body cam. Wholly boring. Just, I don't know what else they had to choose from, but my God, that's the way you start this. It's tough to imagine. By the way, we've identified another member of the trial team, also not a licensed attorney in the state of Colorado. 2 of 3 of the people sitting at the table appear to not be licensed to practice law in the state of Colorado. We're going to try to confirm that, but holy yikes. Listen, I'm going to get right to the phone lines. Ron, you're on 710 KNUS. Ron, what do you think about all this dress code stuff?
Well, I remember reading an author who had interviewed numerous inmates who'd been either involved in shootings of cops and altercations, and they would, part of the interview included, why did you pick this cop? And they pointed out that if a police officer looks, got a 5 o'clock shadow, maybe got some food on his clothes, shoes are scuffed, they give an impression they really don't have their crap together. And if even the way they stand in positionship, people can spot an unprofessional person, and it impacts how they react to that person. Remember the old saying, dress for success?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I would say the reverse is appropriate too.
The other thing,
imagine being stopped if a cop walked up to you in a t-shirt.
I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know what judgments they make versus in a suit or something like that. And Ron, thank you for the call. I also remember that phrase, dress for the job that you want. Looking at me right now, you'd have to believe the job I want is, I don't know, picking up trash at a park or something like that. 303-696-1971. Robert, you're on 710. What do you think, Robert?
Morning, sir.
Hey.
Man, I'll tell you what, when I was a kid, dating myself, my mom worked for the airlines, and when you got on a plane, you didn't have to wear a suit and tie, but you needed to wear, a button-down type shirt or a polo, something decent.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
You weren't getting on in your snuggly PJs and your onesies. And
that's what I'm doing. Not a onesie, but I do that. How do you travel? Do you travel like your mom had it her day, or?
No, and I'll tell you, I think this has kind of been coming for a long time. I'd be perfectly honest with you. I don't really give a crap about the dress code changes in the Senate. If they want to show up looking like slobs, that's all right, because I think most of them are dumb as a brick to start with, and the ones that aren't dumb as a brick are corrupt. So it's like, hey, whatever. But I think it is indicative of how our society has kind of evolved or devolved, in that we really don't seem to put much stock in someone's personal appearance anymore. As a whole, this is not obviously every single person, but kind of as a whole, as our society, we just, hey, whatever, man. You want to wear your flip flops and your jammies or whatever, go ahead. But me personally, and your last caller kind of touched on this too. I read an interview with an FBI agent. This was 25 some odd years ago.
Got 10 seconds, Robert.
Basically, people perceive you as you look. And if you look like a slob, people are going to think you're a slob.
Oh, that's a great point. And in fact, the great way to end. That's what Fetterman said. Evan, I'm sorry I couldn't get to you. Let's try again tomorrow. Hey, listen, my thanks to all the texters, the callers out there. We just kind of got kicked off on that. Pay attention to that trial up there in the 17th. We'll talk about it tomorrow. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.